In the capital, a huge crowd gathered people flocked to some royal spectacle. So that's what it is they all gathered here, to see the first prince of the kingdom of Arkan, Noko. And this official, with such a face that you just want to hit him, announces that he has been sentenced. Our guy Nokal is on his knees. He was given a verdict: exile from the entire kingdom. They call it garbage disposal, but in reality, it's just a little star on the nose, guys. Meanwhile, a girl in pirate attire sits on a raft and watches intently, nearby her pet turtle. Nokal tries to protest, his hands tightly tied behind his back. He is completely panicking, shouting that this is some kind of misunderstanding. But the guard's boot instantly silenced him because, they say, all those legal procedures here are for losers. This flattering official leans closer and with maximum arrogance calls him Former Highness. This minister Shred tells him to shut up, and his look simply screams, "I set you up." Shred explains everything simply and clearly, claiming that Nokal is guilty of 2 serious crimes and F. And for the first attack, he disdainfully lightly poked our guy in the forehead. He claims that this crime is simply possession of his unique skill. It seems these skills are special powers granted by the heavens only to the chosen. But his special skill seems creepy to everyone around and causes an uneasy feeling. His power is called Recycle, and it works only with real garbage and broken junk. Shred calls it forbidden art, which truly subtly stains the kingdom of Woe W with insults. Our guy already knows this. He admits that his power is the reason why he is so hated. That is why he always tried with all his might not even to touch this cursed thing. Nokal desperately proves that his research was for the good of the future kingdom, because he saw how pollution grew from all the garbage and threatened their way of life. That is why he tried to find a way to sensibly use the garbage that overflowed the edge. For a moment the crowd really listened, maybe even believed him. But from the balcony above, a nobleman simply ordered everyone to be silent. He commands Shred, "Do not allow Nokal's cunning words to shake the people. This must not be allowed." Shred immediately bows before this Majesty Geostra, very glad to return to the script again. This Geostra, who looks as if he can barely endure this whole affair, turns out to be the second prince and declares that everything his brother said is pure lies. He insists that he saw the entire incident with his own eyes. At the center of this story is supposedly Nokal, who used a forbidden skill, trying to kill a girl named Rose. Our guy is completely taken aback. He cannot utter a word to defend himself. But Shred is just playing to the crowd, loudly announcing 2 serious crimes: possession of a terrifying ability and attempted murder. The second attack instantly turns the crowd. Now they are shouting, demanding his head. Geostras, smiling with self-satisfaction, declares, "This proves that the skill of alteration is a curse, and it must be punished immediately." Nokwal had not even managed to comprehend the betrayal when the guards already seized him. He fights, shouts that it is all a misunderstanding and that he is innocent. But his pleas are suddenly cut off by a stone to the head, thrown by an enraged crowd. The crowd simply goes mad, shouting for the great center to get out of the kingdom. And our guy just looks broken, accepts his fate. The chance to exile him echoes everywhere. And now the guards lead Nokal through the mocking crowd to begin his official exile. They lead him with a long, lonely walk along the shore to a remote fortress by the sea. His last stop is a miserable wooden raft in the middle of the ocean, literally filled with trash, real guys. Geostra, as always the supportive brother, steps forward and throws the last slightly condescending farewell. He says that this whole performance is an act of mercy because Nokal once had royal status. As a farewell, he gives his brother a whole sea of trash. Let it rain over him. Even the guards laugh, mocking his new kingdom of trash. Shred flattered Geostra, saying that his sympathy became a real show for the soldiers. With the same smile that makes you want to hit, Geostra simply savors it, enjoying every second of his victory. Nokal is left to drift alone in the filth, surrounded by floating junk inside a real skull. Standing on the shore, 2 villains with self-satisfied smiles agree that he won't survive there long. The tiny raft is pushed further and further into the sea. It carries our boy away from everything he ever knew. Beaten and broken, Nokal desperately tries to understand how everything could have gone so terribly wrong. Suddenly, that incident comes to mind. He remembers that he was only trying to use his skill for something useful. We see him where he once wandered, at the huge 5th landfill of the kingdom. He sat over the project, carefully assembling broken parts and fully focused on every move. He proudly raises his finished creation, a helmet made entirely from recycled junk. He quickly throws it on his head to test it, not even suspecting that someone is watching him. But suddenly a voice calls out, "Your Majesty," and he turns around in surprise to see a young girl approaching him. This is Rose, the Prime Minister's daughter, the very girl whose attempted assassination he was just accused of. Rose says she knew she would find him here, looking too pleased with herself. Noko, still in his homemade helmet, just doesn't understand why she ended up in a real junkyard. She immediately got angry and seemed to ask, "What do you mean, why am I here?" Turned out he missed an important class, so she had to track him down on her own now. That's true dedication. She glances at his device and asks if he's making one of his strange gadgets again. She doesn't believe our guy at all. He proudly explains that his helmet has a built-in magical transmitter, which is already ready to show off its brilliant invention. With its help, he can give commands to the levitation device attached to a worn-out old broom. Suddenly, the broom takes off powered by the magical gadget he stuck on top. Then it starts spinning like a possessed Roomba, sweeping light debris, and he watches it with delight. But he admits he has his limits. He can barely lift anything heavier than a barrel. Rose just covers her mouth with her palm, trying hard to hold back laughter at his sad little prank. He calls her, but she just walks past, heading straight to the biggest pile of junk. She raises her hand, flashing a luxurious ring, and begins whispering some spell. Suddenly, a huge gust of wind swirls around her, gathering strength and she releases the spell Divine Gale, which is much more impressive than a flying broom. Nokul is completely stunned. She realizes that she is using high-level wind magic. Her spell, like a light breath, lifts all the heavy trash and in a matter of seconds piles it up. She says with a self-satisfied smile that she can clean up without any junk. She is basically telling him, real magic is just much more effective. Thanks for the game, but no. Nokul is frozen with admiration, acknowledging that the Prime Minister's daughter is simply made differently. Rose just waved her hand as if it were nothing, and said she could even teach him if he wants. Nokul can only scratch his head and admit, yes, magic is definitely more convenient, but then he turns around, holding his homemade helmet, and says that this is not at all what he desires. This completely throws Rose off balance. She just looks at him as if he had grown a second head. She demands to know what a prince could be looking for that is more important than magic. Memories instantly flash in his mind of all the nobles who mocked him because of his useless and dirty skill. And Rose does not back down. She presses further, asking what could weigh more than royal dignity and stunning power. Nokul's face became deadly serious because he was about to drop the bomb of truth. He confesses he had never really had a chance to properly explain himself to anyone before. Returning to her, he finally decided to lay out his grand vision, fueled by trash. He explains that endless wars have turned the kingdom into a factory, stamping out tons of magical weapons. Everyone relentlessly chased the next big thing, a stronger sword, better armor. But as soon as that thing aged or broke, it was simply thrown away like garbage. As a result, huge, ever-growing mountains of magical junk formed. It does not decompose, it constantly poisons the land and kills wild animals. He remembers sounding the alarm before the royal court, but the ministers cared only about quick profit, not the future. So he himself came to the dump, determined to find a solution that no one else would find. Looking at his reflection, he whispered that even discarded things can find new purpose and new opportunities. With complete determination, he vows to protect the land his mother loved so much, even if the whole kingdom despises him for it. And his damn big hero speech completely throws Rose off, leaving her flushed and confused. Rose immediately awkwardly tries to take back what she said and insists that she definitely doesn't think he's cool or anything like that. Nokul, holding his helmet, simply asks if she said something. Romance is clearly not his strong suit. But suddenly his face twists from surprise into pure horror. He yells at Rose to step back, but she still stands there bewildered because her big wind spell just caused a real avalanche of trash right behind her. She finally turns around and lets out a perfectly timed scream of horror. Nokul suddenly realizes it was her flashy magic that shook the whole pile of junk. He desperately rushes to her, knowing he won't make it in time. Even the tiny tail of his flying broom is completely destroyed by a wave of metal scrap from. Having no other choice, he decides to use his forbidden power to try to take control of the junk itself. He is still rushing, trying at least a little to shield her from the worst. This boy even throws a broken shield, as if it will stop a literal mountain of garbage. He stretched out his hand-activated recycle, pouring all his attention into the crumbling pile. His eyes bulge as the power overwhelms him. He can't even imagine what will happen. Suddenly, pieces of junk flew into the air and, rearranging themselves, gathered into something huge. A giant homemade structure of solid scrap metal bursts out of the trash, of course. And from the trash emerges a real golem made of junk, leaving them both completely speechless. This towering giant made of barrels and broken armor looms over the frightened Nokul. His giant hand lowers not to attack, but to shield them from the remaining debris. Rose can only watch as the golem takes the full brunt of the avalanche and saves them both. The dust settles, and it turns out the scrap golem took the entire hit, creating a safe island amid the chaos. Nokul is completely exhausted, barely standing after that crazy stunt. He looks at his creation, which has now turned back into a pile, and is simply glad he managed to stop its fall. But he suddenly turns sharply with a jerk and immediately remembers why he did it in the first place. He hurriedly runs up to Rose, who is lying unconscious on the ground, and panikedly calls her by name like. He reaches out to her and she, thank God, begins to move and groan. His face filled with a wave of pure relief when he realized she was really alive. At that very moment, he heard someone call, asking who else could be here. And of course, his brother Geostra, with a couple of guards, appears at the best possible moment. The eyes of the second prince instantly fixed on the unconscious Rose lying among the debris. Then he sees a huge, somewhat threatening pile of scrap metal that was once a golem. Geostra's face twisted with pure rage, and he demanded to know what the hell had just happened. Nokul simply raises his eyes to him, still on his knees beside Rose, and about to explain this whole confusion. A flash of memories instantly fades, and Noko sharply returns to reality, realizing that he was only trying to save the future of the kingdom. He remembers the smug faces of his brother in the shred, and understands that they did not believe him for a second. His skill instantly turns the burning arrow into nothing but dust. Washa's face the perfect picture of what, damn it, just happened. Our boy stands up and now stands between that boy and the stunned naval officers. Behind him, the boy raises his eyes in amazed wonder and realizes, being a pirate or not doesn't matter at all. Nokul narrowed his eyes, thinking that whatever the excuse, attacking a defenseless child is unforgivable. The aura of fire flares, he extends the ring and declares that the real trash here is them. Washa pulls on his cigar and demands to know who this nobody is. It's clear he's not local. Our boy just looks him in the eyes, not at all afraid of those military airs. A cold expression freezes on his face. He is sure that this braggart doesn't even guess who he is talking to, a prince. The colonel sharply says that this very newcomer just broke the attack of his soldiers from. With a confident smile, Washa mockingly asks if our guy can withstand an entire squad, ordering everyone to aim. Noko's eyes narrow. He definitely will not retreat from this fight. Suddenly, he just kicks down a huge pile of burning wooden planks, quickly apologizes to the boy for using his house, then raises the ring time to use his skill. Washa just shouted his, release the arrows. A whole wave of arrows, howling, rushes straight at Noko and the debris near which he stands. His hand flashed with light. He activated the skill and is ready to repel the entire attack. His skill is recycle. All those broken wooden fragments fly up and merge into a huge shield. An arrow with a dull thud hit the makeshift wooden wall in vain. It wasn't even close. Noko's skill turns the whole house into a perfect airtight barricade. Washer and his thugs just stand, confused. Their attack had no effect at all. Behind the wall, the boy and his mother watch with eyes wide open in amazement as their house literally saves them. But Nokul is not going to stop. He reaches forward, ready to turn this defense into a brutal attack. Suddenly, some household junk starts flying through the air, and not just randomly, but with a serious purpose. All those fragments come together, forming a huge, fierce fist aimed directly at the fleet. The soldiers raise their eyes in pure horror as their demise, made of furniture, falls upon them. This thing grows and becomes a gigantic hand, and Nokul declares that the games are over. With a fierce roar, our guy swings his giant junculum hand straight at the enemy line. Your female tries to block the approaching trash lunch with bare hands. A brave strategy. Let's see how it turns out. And here a stunning shot of his face, twisted with pure, genuine panic. This fist made of junk falls with incredible force and scatters the soldiers like bowling pins. His people were completely smashed by barrels and boards. It was a shameful defeat. The boy just sits, frozen in silence from the total chaos unfolding before him. Washa, now completely out of his mind, shouts to his men, use all your strength to kill Noko. One soldier, either too brave or too foolish, really rushed into the attack with his sword ready to carry out that crazy order. He doesn't even manage to get close. He is simply thrown into the air and crashes face down with a thud. That soldier was left on the ground, twitching convulsively, a clear warning to anyone else who might have bright ideas. It was then that backup appeared. Genius and Murmursig landed right in the middle of the battle. Genius landed in the middle of the bloody slaughter and firmly demanded, what the hell is going on here? The soldier lying on the ground recognized in her the daughter of the famous pirate and simply lost his mind over the harpy. He hurriedly runs up to Washa and insists that they can't handle the harpy, so they need to retreat strategically. Washa's cigar just fell out of his mouth. That's the whole mask of his coolness. He dramatically points, orders a full retreat, but promises to remember this little stunt. And with that, the entire fleet turned around and fled to the mountains. The villager, seeing the tormentors flee, burst into joyful cries and applause in honor of his unexpected rescuers. Nokul shook the dust from his hands and casually noted that finally everything had settled down. Jinna was horrified, thinking that the sailors had seen his face, but Noko points out that he didn't even suspect he was a prince. He cheerfully raised his thumb and said that everything was fine, the fleet wouldn't recognize him from the times when he lived in a pile of garbage. The immediate threat receded. Nokul announces that it is time to get to work and help the villagers rebuild their homes. Genius just looks at him with wide-open, completely fascinated eyes. But just at that moment, out of nowhere, a wave of dizziness swept over Nocle. Suddenly he falls to his knees, clutching his head, and Genius calls out his name. Our guy is completely exhausted, not understanding why his body suddenly became so heavy and powerless. Genius and Natum instantly understood what was happening. It was the backlash of his ability. Natum says that creating that gigantic junkarm must have burned an incredible amount of energy. Nokul tries to stand up, insisting that he is fine, he just needs to catch his breath. When the team returns to help, before them stands the back of a woman in a floral bandana. Suddenly, they find themselves face to face with a group of peasants who do not look grateful at all. The village elder recognizes Nokul as the supposedly executed Prince Alkeen's well. Now his invisibility can be forgotten. Genius and Natum immediately panic and insist that he is not bad, and instead of a fight, a huge feast suddenly appears on the table. What a twist. It turned out that the angry crowd was just a welcome party. Now they call the team the saviors of the village. Nokul is completely confused and asks why they are so kind to a wanted criminal like him. This peasant proudly says that he not only beat Washa, but also rebuilt their entire town with his skill. Laughing out loud, the boy declared that he owes Nokul his life and told him, "Just eat already." After a moment of hesitation, our guy finally starts eating, accepting their hospitality. The whole team eagerly starts eating, and Nokul admits how nice it is to finally eat on solid ground. Even Murmur, Sig, and Genius happily stuff their mouths, the previous danger completely forgotten. Genius sincerely and politely thanks the man for sharing such precious food with them. One word catches Noko's attention, and he immediately understands the village lacks food. We see the legendary pirate Francis again, a kind of man who clearly had a weakness for children. Meanwhile, Jinna happily suspects nothing and continues to enjoy her lunch without any worries. Nokul aloud pronounces the name Francis, piecing together the puzzle from the child's story. The same boy from that time suddenly jumps up and excitedly asks if the prince knows his hero. He says that Francis freed him from slavery and brought all the orphans here so they could become one family. And then an explosion. A villager indifferently says that the famous pirate Francis is actually Ginya's father. Natum looks worried and adds that she heard Francis disappeared some time ago. The atmosphere in the room suddenly darkened. The villagers lowered their eyes. The celebration officially ended. The village elder begins to explain, saying that since everything started, a very long time has passed. One day Francis set out on a voyage to have a little chat with the king of the Alkan. Nokul is simply shocked and asks why the pirate would even want to meet his father. Before disappearing, Francis seemed to try to solve a serious problem for the island. Natum picked up a rotten apple core and sincerely explained that he wanted to clean up the trash on the island. Our guy's face just fell when he connected the trash and the lack of food. Local fish eat poisonous magical fragments and poison anyone who eats them, a true 5-star experience. The islanders couldn't cope on their own, so Francis went to the kingdom begging for help. Nokul finally understood this magical pollution was the real cause of hunger in the village. The father's mission is not yet complete, so Jinna rises, with eyes burning with determination, ready to take matters into her own hands. Her hand clenches with determination. It is clear that she intends to see this through to the end. She takes a stance, swearing to protect everyone from both trash and villains, and looks incredibly heroic. This villager just explodes with emotion, completely fired up by her statement that she will become their new protector. They are already calling her the next captain, and the whole hall is just boiling with excitement. Nokul just watches with a proud smile, happy to see her finding her purpose. He then turns to Jinya and instantly grabs her attention with a simple call of her name. He looked at her seriously and said that he is finally beginning to understand why her father is so respected here. He was so inspired that he leaned forward and impatiently asked for more stories about the legendary pirate. Genius froze for a second in surprise, but then a huge happy smile spread across her face. From the other end of the room, she joyfully answers, yes, ready to share all the stories about her father. Meanwhile, at that stern-looking naval base, someone is about to receive an angry report. Aha, someone got insanely angry and slammed their fist on the table with a loud bang. A new official with a truly sinister nose shouts that some trash dared to humiliate him. When Francis left, he raged and shouted that this is the perfect chance to finally destroy the entire village. A subordinate timidly notes that they need a real plan to resist the harpy and that mysterious skill user. Our villain with the long nose grits his teeth because Jinna brought extra companions to the party. He boiled with rage, amazed at how she managed to tame a bunch of monsters and inherit her father's talent for leadership. Another soldier grinned, as if to say nothing less was expected from Francis's daughter, while his comrade looked frightened. For that little remark, he gets a fist right in the face. Bon appetit. The official with the long nose dealt the blow, his fist now bloody, and he looked down angrily at the defiant thug. He completely lost it, shouting at the subordinate for daring to praise the enemy right in front of him. Then with a sharp kick he finishes off the fallen soldier. Apparently, he sincerely believes in positive reinforcement. Lad sprays his luxurious medal and complains in a whining voice that some trash just can't comprehend his glorious achievements. His face distorted with furious rage, he shouts that there is no place here for people like them. Returning to the village, the night is quiet, and only one lit window holds our gaze. Inside, Nokul rests and thinks to himself that today was definitely lively. Suddenly it becomes clear to him, Francis's unfinished business is actually that very dream of his. He looks at his ring and thinks that with a new purpose, Jinnia's will probably stay on his raft. Just at that moment, the silhouette of a girl with cat ears appeared at his door. The door creaks and opens. Nadam appears and shouts her name, although our guy was clearly expecting a genius. But no. Nokul, a bit surprised by her nighttime visit, casually asks what happened. His eyes widen slightly for a moment when he sees this unexpected situation. Nadam apologizes for disturbing him, explains that she just needed to see him, and nervously adds that she has something important she wants to talk about with him. Looking shyly, she asked if she could come into his room for a short while. Our guy, always a gentleman, smiles and invites her inside, and since there are no chairs, offers her his bed. She politely thanks him and sits right on the edge of the mattress. Sitting there, Nokul can't help but notice. Tonight she has a completely different, more mature aura. She barely moved closer to him on the bed. And Nokul just panicked, jumped back and gasped, sorry, a true pro, buddy. He gathers his courage and asks her to calm down, just say what's on your mind. Nadam becomes serious and says she came because she has to tell him something. He is puzzled. Why did it happen to him? She stubbornly says she does not want to bother the other villagers. Outside, the full moon hangs in the sky, casting a sad shade on the secret meeting. She finally confesses. Her goal is to tell him the real reason why she experienced a shipwreck at sea. We dive into a flashback where a much younger Nadam calls for Dad. Her father, a tall, friendly Puritet, turned around and gently asked her what was the matter. She asks if he is setting out again to play the righteous pirate by order of the fleet. He just laughs and says, they are like cats, they help people simply because they want to themselves. And we see their pirate flag, a cute but determined cat's face proving its rightness. Her father proudly calls them the Sea Cats Pirates, a team that follows its heart. Much younger Nadam simply sparkles, completely enchanted by the romance of it all. On his shoulders, she cheerfully shouts that she will definitely become a pirate when she grows up. He gently lowers her from his shoulders. Her admiration freezes for a moment. He kneels down and tells her that it's not so simple, but then smiles and adds that she is his daughter. He strokes her head with a proud smile and promises that someday she will definitely become the heavenly king. Just at that moment, the naval officer called Francis and he instantly stood up, ready to go. She anxiously asks him why he is setting off on the Golden Lynx instead of their ship. Francis spoke heavily. The kingdom hates pirates, so the only way to get to the castle is to go with the fleet. Waving goodbye, he entrusts Jinya to protect the sea lions until he returns. The memory ended, and we found ourselves again in the quiet room under the moonlight, in the present. Nadam whispered to Nokul that it was the last time she saw her father alive. Shortly after he disappeared, Washa came to the village with a group of important people and brought grim news. Here is that long-nosed official who declares Francis dead and orders the sea lions to be disbanded. The village elder is furious, loudly demanding to know why they are doing this. That scoundrel with a self-satisfied smile explains that their ship originally belonged to the kingdom, so it is simply being returned to the crown. But the peasant insists fervently. Francis has a daughter, Ginia, and she must be the true heir. Or are the thieves simply mocking, spitting smoke in her face, and dismissing the idea that some child could inherit anything? He taps his pipe, and a vile idea awakens in his mind. What if? Then he slips in a sneaky deal. The genius can take the ship, but only if he obtains a privateer license at the Naval Academy. The village elder grabbed the young genius, enraged at the very thought that a child could inherit the ship. And here our villain with the long nose intervenes, smugly telling her that she was simply unlucky. He cheerfully explains that the Academy's training lasts 4 years, so by her second year the ship will be gone. It simply didn't fit in his mind. She could never make it in time. And Jinna just clenches her father's hat, her face a mask of pure, unwavering determination. So against all odds, she's still enrolled in the Naval Academy, ready to prove everyone wrong. She stands there and it's immediately clear. She is a stranger among all these cadets who just stare. She now has a new goal to graduate in 2 years, and everyone around says in one voice that it's impossible. Of course, the other students only mock her aspirations, and while she studies, throw trash at her. Even her books are covered with magical notes like "see garbage" and "get lost." Despite the bullying, she holds on to the fact that the chance is not zero, it still exists. She throws herself into intense physical training, pushing her body to the absolute limit. And it bears fruit. Her name rapidly rises to the top of the class ranking, shocking everyone. This incredible performance captivates one of the fleet's chief admirals, an old man covered with awards. He says there is a system by which the most talented can skip grades, and only he decides this. With flair, he promotes the genius directly from 2nd grade to 4th, to the great horror of the villain. Our long-nosed scoundrel just sweats and agrees, because he simply cannot argue with the big boss. Genius accepts the promotion with tears in her eyes and thanks the admiral for this opportunity. Although Washa clearly hates her, he is powerless to overturn the admiral's final decision. Thanks to that promotion, she managed to pass the graduation exam, the naval training battle, within 2 years. This is a trial one-on-one, a training fight. You win as soon as you mark the enemy ship with a special magic. And it all ended in complete failure because Ginny was terribly seasick. She returns to the pier completely depressed and admits that she couldn't do anything there. The fleet admiral says to her with regret, "What a great pity, she is perfect in everything, except practical skills let her down." But as Francis's daughter, he makes a special exception and advises her to try again on another ship. Washa stands in the shadows and grits his teeth, insanely angry about this obvious bias. So for the second attempt, Ginny decided to take the exam right on her father's ship, the Sea Cat. She even puts on her father's old pirate uniform, hoping to borrow some of his courage for the fight. With a new fire in her eyes, she felt that this might finally give her the confidence she needed. But the cadets assigned, as her crew already insist, that she leave the ship before the fight begins. These real pearls call her sea trash and say that the lieutenant colonel ordered them not to help her. Ginny desperately reaches out, begging them to wait at least a moment. She cannot steer such a huge ship by herself, and they are just rowing away, leaving her completely abandoned. It is then that the enemy ship opens fire, and these shots are by no means like training. A salvo of real cannonballs whistles and rushes straight at her vessel. They crash into the hull. Real explosions tear the deck to pieces. Genius was thrown across the deck, while her father's legacy shattered into fragments. This massive crack running through the entire ship simply breaks apart. Lying on the ground, she realizes that this is not harmless magic for testing, but a real combat attack. And from another ship, one of the cadets just watches as destruction unfolds around. The senior cadet on the enemy ship panics and shouts into the radio to Washa, demanding new orders. He says they have isolated the genius, but admits hitting her turns out to be difficult. Washa tells him to just say later that it was an accident and to send skeletons to finish her off. With a face that only a mother could hate, he mockingly says that sea trash deserves a proper burial. His subordinate immediately relays the order to prepare the skeletons for launch. And when they say launch, they mean it quite literally. They catapult barrels right onto its deck, because why not? The barrel fell and broke right next to Jinya. She didn't even have time to prepare for the bizarre attack. She's just trying to comprehend what is happening, while gifts from hell rain down on her ship in a storm suddenly. Suddenly, one of the barrels inside began to crack into splinters with a crack. A skeletal hand pierces the wood through, and through surprise, there was a murder in the box. A skeleton in armor climbs out and finds itself in front of a completely stunned genius. It turns out Washa sent an entire platoon of bony thugs just to be safe. Genius is in complete horror, finally realizes that this was never a test. One of them lunged forward with a sword, and she barely dodged the blow. The blade only slightly grazed her. Cornered and wounded, she desperately rushes to the captain's cabin. She barely manages to slam the heavy door shut behind her. Inside, everything collapses, and the whole room shakes while the ship continues to tear apart. She squeezes her leg in her hand, and only now realizes that during that last dodge, the cut was deeper than it seemed to her. Her consciousness begins to fade because blood loss and shock take their toll, and, returning to the present, Nat M says that it was then she fainted just before Nockville found her drifting in the sea. Hearing her story, Nokel's fist clenches so hard that the whole bed shakes. He literally explodes with rage, and Jinya jumps back, completely stunned by his reaction. There was nothing else in his head, only one thought. The bastard Vasha was indifferent to her death. Genius quickly tries to calm him down, apologizing for dumping all this on him, but Nokel's expression changes from pure rage to cold, steel determination. He looks her straight in the eyes and asks, "What do you want to do now? Are you giving up your license?" Because the cat eyes narrowed and a fire burned in them that said, categorically no. Looking out the window, she swears that she will not give up either her father's dream or her own. Nokel gently tells her that to revive the sea cats, she will have to confess everything, but this trauma hits her with full force. She is terrified that she will be abandoned and called sea trash again. And our guy just smiles and says, "See, trash perfect," because of course he does that. The genius stands in complete amazement. His strangely cheerful response simply threw him off balance. He turned to her and said that she is no longer alone now she has friends. She still hesitates. She is tormented by the thought of what will happen if she fails the next mock battle. Nockville sharply pulls out a glowing artifact and promises to turn Genius into something incredible. Overwhelmed by his strangely sincere support, she simply burst into tears of relief. Meanwhile, behind the door, the harpy and the boy were eavesdropping on everything that was happening. The sun rises over the island, a new day begins, and a new plan is already maturing in the air. Elsewhere, breakfast is ready, and someone is calling Nokel over the grilled fish. The mermaid, holding a fish on a stick, wonders where that Jinya is. She puts people first. The mermaid and the genius eagerly devour the fish, occasionally raising their eyes and asking themselves where Nokel has gone. They say about the wolf it is exactly then that Jinnah notices him, climbing the path next to a very sullen local. Nokel, with a slight smile, tells that he found this guy at the dump, and this clearly infuriates the man. Raising his own fried fish, he says that he got hungry and caught it right in the bay. This throws the local into a real panic. He shouts at the top of his lungs. He grabs Nokel and tries to forcibly make him spit it out, shouting that the local fish is contaminated. Our guy, who is a bit bored, simply raises his hand to stop him. With a confident smile, Nokel explains that it is actually quite normal for him to eat contaminated food. Both the genius and the local freeze in their gaze. Their brains simply cannot comprehend that sentence. In a flashback, his protected days as a prince come alive, when childhood curiosity drew him to poisonous fish beyond the castle walls. His first taste attempt naturally ended with him nearly dying on the ground, a true scientific method. So he just kept eating them, developing antidotes, gaining immunity through frank, reckless self-poisoning. And now he proudly resists, and his new friends look as if their souls have just flown out of their bodies. This mermaid and the turtle boy almost begged everyone, "Do not try this at home, it's pure madness." Genius, ever the professional, interrupts the conversation and directly asks him, how did the plan really go? The scene changes. She stands in the office and reports calmly to the official. And of course, it is Washa who mocks her absolutely crazy request to repeat the training fight. With a confident smile, he tells her that he has already informed the fleet admiral of her death, so now it is too late. But suddenly a small wicked thought runs through his head, and he seems to start considering options differently. Washer agreed to a retake, and the genius sincerely thanked him, not suspecting at all that this was yet another trap. Of course, Washa adds a small condition to his generous offer. The deal is simple. If she loses this time, the military will take away all her father's wealth. He gloatingly says, such wealth deserves only the strong, not some loser who can't even pass a test. And if she refuses, he casually hints that another misfortune may befall her village, pure blackmail. Having no choice, Ginny has quietly agreed to his terms, completely trapped. Returning to her friends, she clenches her fists and decisively says that the rematch officially begins now. Her biggest problem now is that her father's ship is missing, and she fears she will have to sail on a stranger's ship. But Nokel just smiles, holding a turtle, and behind him a harpy materializes with a plan. Suddenly he grabs her by the wrist, ready to pull her into his next brilliant, probably crazy idea. And saying let's go, he drags along a very confused genius. The whole squad follows him through the forest, heading to his secret project. Nokul dramatically points into the distance and tells her, "Just look." Her eyes widen in complete disbelief at what she sees, because moored to the pier is a huge pirate ship with all sails and rigging, as if ready for battle. The genius can only stammer, saying his name Golden Lynx, and Nokul just beams. He explains that since they needed a pirate ship, he simply crafted it from a raft and a pile of scrap on the side. Despite the incredible gift, Jinya still peeks out from behind the mast, clearly frightened. She turns to Nokul, and doubt trembles in her voice as she begins to explain her greatest fear. It's unfortunate, but even on this incredible ship, seasickness still knocks her onto her back. She is grateful but horrified that this new ship will simply be destroyed, and she will have to relive her trauma again. Just as she began to fall into the abyss, a local scrap metal man shouted at her. And behind him, a whole village, armed and ready to fight. The genius froze in surprise and loudly asked, "Why is everyone here?" This harpy calmly admits that she overheard her sad story last night. Privacy is just advice to her. Nadham explains that when they heard she was reviving pirates, they called everyone to help. The local guy suddenly realized that Wash's plan was to steal her fortune and crush the village. Nokul, holding a turtle in his hands, just smiles and says that this is their counterplan. He strikingly posed and declared that they would become her team for a training fight. The genius's brain simply shuts down, unable to comprehend this level of chaotic support. After a second, the shock finally reaches her, and she completely loses her head. She grabs Nokul, feverishly explaining that the team was already appointed by Washa himself. But the local just raises a finger from the barn, where Washa's team is tied up and dozing. The genius still hesitates, recalling one last time that seasickness that paralyzes her. The little turtle suddenly jumps out and assures her that there is nothing to worry about. He explains that they used magic to stabilize the entire ship. It won't even sway. She looks around and finally realizes that the deck beneath her feet is completely still. Turning back to the local, she says that everyone just does whatever they want. He just smirks, says that's what sea cats do, and offers her the captain's hat. Her hand slowly reaches out, touching the familiar cat on the crossbone emblem. Stunned, she turns to Nokul, finally ready to accept their crazy, wonderful help. Clutching her hat to her chest, she thanks them through tears for everything. Nokul, and behind him his entire chaotic squad, encourages her, promising victory. Putting on the hat, she fully immerses herself in the role of captain of this motley crew. Raising her fist up, she shouts that she will borrow their strength for this battle. The whole village erupts with applause and shouts, officially christening the new brilliant pirate crew. The scene changes. Nokul sits on the raft. He has just sewn a new suit for the little turtle. Nadam decides to transform into a humanoid to try on the new outfit. Because of this transformation, a real girl hangs on a very, very stunned Nokul. He wakes up on the pier, completely confused, and hopes it was just a strange dream. Meanwhile, the harpy, proudly showing the berries she grew herself, convinces everyone there is no need to worry about food. It turns out these magical berries also serve as soap, probably convenient. Nadam explains that the islanders once used all sorts of strange fruits to wash off dirt and grime. It seems this has grown into a true cult of worshipping garbage. Nokul was simply stunned by this. Thanks to all these new resources, they can finally filter water and cook full meals. This harpy wonders, why does he even bother cleaning materials if they will need them again soon? He begins to explain, but suddenly a flock of crows bursts in and starts stealing everything indiscriminately. Nokul cries and says that wild birds constantly steal his supplies to build nests, and this is a real struggle. His next project is a grill powered by magic, but he honestly admits he lacks the strength to start it. This harpy admits that she herself does not know how to use magic, and Nadam simply tells him to stop. Natam explains that as an old-timer, he has no idea how these modern magical devices work at all. Nadam explains that some magical freak caused a rampage, because of which the islanders lost all faith. Agreeing to this, Nokul announces that everyone is boarding the ship so that the magic cannon finally works. The little turtle immediately asks if this giant cannon is really necessary, hoping it won't have to be used. In his head, there is only one thing. He did not protect that one girl, at least in the eyes of others. His face turned into a mask of pure, unmasked rage because of betrayal. He breaks free from his chains, craving the power to change at least something. A scream bursts in his head. If I were stronger, none of this would have happened. And when he clenches his fists, Rose's luxurious ring slips from his hands and plops right in front of him. Nokul's eyes instantly widened. He looked at the ring that just fell from his hands with disbelief. He looks at his palms, completely confused, not understanding whether his ability just worked on its own. The ring now hangs in the air. A strange fibrous substance slowly began to materialize from it. In his hand is a bundle of raw hemp fiber. His ability seemed to have broken the thing down to its very basics. He carefully examines the ring and quietly admits his power is still a mystery. Suddenly, childhood memories emerge. His mother sternly said never to use his gift, people are afraid of it. But hovering here in the middle of deep nowhere, he feels no one is left to judge him anymore. Deciding that it is better to die than to fade away in vain, he concentrates all his will on the magic of the ring. With a new sense of purpose, he finally decides to test the true potential of his ability to recycle. A broken wooden crate floated by a perfect target for his first real experiment. He channels his power through the ring and aims at a fragment swaying on the water's surface. Focusing his intent, he decides to check if this time he can consciously disassemble the object. A spark of the former inventor flashes within him again. A genuine smile appears on his face as he prepares to try. He suddenly stretches his hand forward and shouts the name of his skill, recycle, this time with full control. The broken crate instantly falls apart, then reassembles into a neat stack of flawless wooden planks. Our guy holds the results in his hands, completely stunned he has just turned junk into quality wood. His thoughts race instantly, devising how to use this, and suddenly a decisive memory clicks in his head. He remembers that avalanche, how subconsciously he assembled a huge golem from metal junk to save Rose. Finally, it dawns on him. His skill is not only to disassemble, but also to assemble. He knows how to build. Looking at the endless sea of garbage, his despair turns into determination. This is not a prison, this is a workshop. He understood he would need ore to break through this endless sea of garbage. He places his hand on the freshly processed wood, the magic ring already shining. In his imagination, he clearly sees the exact shape he needs, directing all his determination to the design from. Shouting recycle, once again, he unleashes all his strength on the pile of firewood, and the perfectly formed or simply materializes right there on his homemade raft. Our boy lifts it up, shining with happiness. Now he is officially a magical craftsman. The quality shocks him. He honestly admits that he has no idea how to build this himself at all. Suddenly it dawns on him. His skill does not require blueprints. It is almost a divine cheat code. Gears quickly started turning in his head. He realized that he could probably create almost anything he can imagine. For a moment he wondered, would Brother Giostra allow him to build a new life right here? But he quickly brushed that thought away, deciding he would think about it later. He recalls his brother's farewell words. He sarcastically gifted him this sea of garbage. A brief, pure spark of defiance flashed across Nakla's face when he realized that last insult. Standing proudly on the raft, he understands, if this is his kingdom, he can do whatever he wants. He tightly clenches the ring, fully accepting the challenge. All right, Giostra, you're in the game. But Harpy insists, they need serious armament, they cannot guarantee a safe trip. Suddenly a flash of memories. Nokula is chased by giant monsters, and for him, this is obviously just another Tuesday. Meanwhile, on the main island, Genius returned officially to tell what happened. Washa Ever, that scoundrel, is peeking from the window and confirms that he heard about her request for a rematch. A high-ranking admiral met her halfway but gave the order, if she fails this time, it's the end for her. The subordinate bows and leaves, promising to deliver the final test results. The assistant's hand squeezes the device, which ominously and irrevocably snaps shut. And Washa simply radiates pure villain energy, absolutely sure that the sea trash will not get through. He surveys his luxurious office and is already counting the pile of money he plans to seize. But just then a soldier burst into the room and completely interrupted his villainous monologue. This soldier, overwhelmed with panic, reports that the entire Genius team roster has been mysteriously replaced. This news completely short-circuited Washa's brain. He dropped the pen cap in shock. The camera sharply cuts to the docks. There a huge golden link stands waiting, fully ready for battle. On the deck, the pocket watch ticks ominously. It is a sign that the trial is about to begin. A crew member loudly calls her by name, letting her know that the moment has finally come. With a steady hand, Jinya adjusts her new captain's cloak, and her face shows pure determination. She spins in place, fully immersed in pirate life, and loudly shouts, "Ahoy, friends, the transformation is real." The crew busily prepares the huge pirate ship, Golden Lynx, for battle. The flag with a cat skull and bones proudly waves, signaling that they are setting off. This Jolly Roger with a fierce cat face flies on the ship's sails. The magical cannon is already ready for battle. Its spherical eye glows with anticipation of the fight. Jinya is now fully in the role of captain, holding a spyglass. She intently gazes at the horizon. On the stormy waves appeared the training ship, second in rank at the academy. The rival captain, an officer with a stone face, closely watches the approaching pirate ship. A sinister smile plays on the rival captain's lips. He anticipates the upcoming clash. He sees the golden lynx materializing on the horizon and instantly recognizes it. It is the ship Jinya. The enemy captain notices. The battle has finally begun, and the stakes are extremely high. On the training ground, this team is visible. One runs, another pants. This enemy captain stands atop the magical cannon, ready to give orders. The magical cannon is aimed at a strange spiked projectile that is about to fire. This enemy captain raises his hand, a signal to attack. A magical shot from the cannon rushes over the water toward the Jinya ship. The incoming projectile strikes these golden links, tearing others apart. Another explosion occurred very close to the golden chains and raised a huge splash. The genius, in the guise of a pirate captain, loudly gives orders to her team with fierce determination. The peasant at the helm steers the ship, focused and holding the wheel firmly. This golden link maneuvers in the water, dodging the approaching fire. With one more shot, this golden lynx was simply blown apart, and wooden splinters scatter all over the deck. Her rival is completely stunned. She cannot comprehend how they managed to fire back from such a distance at all. The genius calmly says, "This is practical battle magic. Get used to it, friend." Meanwhile, somewhere else, Washa is simply losing her head, shouting that they are breaking the rules again. She stands firm, firmly declaring that she was ready for this from the very moment she agreed to the rematch. Suddenly, a flash of memory. The officer accused her of breaking the rules during the previous test. The same officer, a woman with cat ears, now suspects that Washa was blackmailing Jinya all along. Her hands clench with rage as the pieces of the blackmail finally come together. On the enemy ship, they are reloading the salvo again. 3 magical cannons glow ominously. The guard shouted that the next attack is already approaching. We don't even have time to catch our breath. The genius's eyes narrowed in sharp concentration. There was no fear left in her. Without blinking, she sharply shouted to the helmsman, straight at the enemy. And this damn turtle boy is now panicking, asking if she seriously intends to take the hit herself. 3 magical projectiles cut through the water surface and rush straight into the golden lynx. But our girl just smiles slyly, and it turns out their ship has much more magical armor than it seems. When the wind was blowing against them, she activated some magical banner on the mast. Suddenly, a giant magical barrier flared up right at the ship's bow. She's going to use this to completely neutralize the power of the incoming magical explosion. The enemy shot bit into the water, and its power dissipated before it even touched the hull. This rival captain simply froze when she realized she had perfectly calculated the strength of his attack. On the deck, Jinya stands her ground, and her misfit crew behind her burns with zeal. One of the peasants is simply stunned, says it's like she literally saw the future. A local from the yard intervened and confirmed. She flawlessly predicted every one of their moves. This instantly throws her into a childhood memory where her premonition saved her former crew countless times. He becomes truly serious, recalling how her father Francis spoke about her gift. She could read the sky and see, predicting everything by the currents. Listening to the wind, watching the clouds, and even the birds, she saw what was coming. It turned out her father, the legendary pirate, taught her everything: naval tactics and enemy psychology. Her strength is a crazy ability to sense the situation. She catches every detail and instantly assembles a picture from them to predict the enemy's next move. This is not just sixth sense, it's more like the brain of a supercomputer running combat simulations in real time. And now, with her seasickness gone, here is a true genius in action. Peering through the spyglass, she watches tensely as the enemies gather again on their ship. She notices they are already preparing another volley, pouring magic into their cannons from. Raising her hand, she gives orders to her people: straight at them, but be very vigilant. This golden link moved right next to the enemy ship, a bold and aggressive maneuver. Her rival captain completely loses his head, shouting to the helmsman to outsmart her, but Jinya's is already 5 steps ahead, calmly noting that if this is a race, he has already lost. Suddenly, a set of massive, magic-charged oars emerges from the hull of the golden lynx, and with insane speed, they leave the warship far behind. Already in the perfect position, she points and gives the final order: starboard artillerymen fire. This rival captain completely loses his head, shouting at the crew to do that starry something. From the golden links of the full salvo bursts a wave of fire aimed directly at the warship. Those cannons tear apart the enemy ship's hull, splinters fly in all directions. Turned out they were not shooting cannonballs, those were huge blobs of black paint, repainting the enemy tower. A comrade on the team joyfully celebrates the direct hit, wildly delighted that it succeeded. With a confident smile, Genya orders them to hold course and go on the attack. But this victory turns out to be short-lived. Her eyes widen in shock as she sees what is happening now. On the enemy ship stands that officer with cat ears, and somehow all that makeup just disappeared. Not even a second for explanation, Genya shouts to her team, "Lie down on the ground now." Her order sounds exactly at the moment when the huge mass of the ship breaks apart with a crash and collapses onto the deck. This is. The one who just celebrated now simply screams, barely dodging falling debris. Instantly, the Golden Lynx froze dead on the water, smoking and heavily damaged. On the enemy ship, the captain frantically searches for a damage report and shouts if everyone is okay. On her own deck, Genya sincerely admits she completely let down her guard and fully fell for their trap. Meanwhile, her opponent feels like the main hero, basking in the applause of his team. He sneers mockingly and says he knew she read his direct assault, so from the very beginning he planned to strike her in the back. And here is his trump card. He installed hidden cannons on the stern, the perfect response to her aggressive flanking maneuvers. The Academy representative called over and, exhaling with relief, reported that no one died during the attack. The relief instantly fades from his face, and he grimly says that for her this is the worst possible outcome. Because after that last salvo, which broke their mast and hull, the Golden Lynx is now officially out of the fight. The ship is barely holding. The navigator throws to Genya, "We are again just targets under enemy fire." Her entire team is now in real panic, running chaotically across the deck. One of her comrades desperately asks what they should do, and Genya just sweats. She clenches a small bullet in her hand and admits that at first she only planned to buy time to win. But now, with them dead, the water is about to catch them. It's only a matter of time. The peasants panic, realizing they don't even have real cannons to fight back. It is then that the janitor confirms their weapons were actually just nice paint sprayers, now completely useless. Even the harpy loses self-control, and in a burst of pure, uncontrollable irritation, grabs a crew member. The crew member clenched his fist, insanely angry about their utterly hopeless situation. He starts shouting that they need to find any kind of trash and use it as a weapon, just something. It is then that Genius has a brilliant, absolutely crazy idea: trash. Her first assistant just looks back, completely puzzled by her sudden mysterious flash of insight. On the enemy ship, the watchman raised his spyglass to his eye. He too looked puzzled at what he saw. Because the Genius team is now in panic, pushing a whole broken mast overboard from their ship. They are literally just throwing all the heavy debris into the sea. It is a bold, desperate move. The captain of her rival instantly understood everything. She was dropping ballast to speed up. He smiles slyly, realizing that her new plan is simply to run away from him until time runs out. And it really works. The light and Golden Lynx slowly pulls away from the warship. Someone from the crew shouted her name, and Genia simply showed a confident thumbs up in response. With a determined look, she tells her team, "Hold on a little longer and keep moving forward." Genius suddenly shuddered. A strange buzzing came from her hand. It is a magical communication scroll, and someone is calling her right in the middle of the battle at the worst possible moment. On the other side, her rival, with a condescending smile, asks if she likes their little chase. He stands on his deck and gloatingly watches his ship is finally approaching. The Golden Lynx are mangled and smoking. It is only a matter of time before they are caught. Her rivals, with a smug smile, mock that she was just trying to buy time. They say her ship is now practically useless. Genius just silently listens, worry on her face, and he is still talking. He points out the obvious. Their weapons are ridiculous. Their defeat is completely guaranteed. It seems Washa ordered him to sink them, but he was so generous that he spared trash. Grand offer: just surrender now, abandon the ship, and he will mercifully spare them. Genius's face is hidden in shadow. She clenches the communicator and runs his ultimatum through her mind. This guy just won't stop. Monologue after monologue, he is completely confident in his victory and in her despair. But then Genius smirks and tells him that they also have weapons under the ship. Her rival is completely confused, repeating her words in total bewilderment below. Because right in front of them floats all that junk they dumped earlier. It is a huge, tangled mass of planks, barrels, and broken parts, a floating minefield of pure junk. One of his observers suddenly notices that the mass they got rid of is now a huge, tangled obstacle. This captain rival just loses it, shouting about what she thinks she is doing with all this junk. Genius calmly tells him that he is about to find out exactly what it does. Then she orders her gunners, aim at the trash floating right under the enemy ship. The cannons of this Golden Lynx thundered. A volley of real trash crashed onto the floating debris. All this bursts into the water and causes a huge chain reaction. The debris explodes one after another. Her rival is soaked to the bone and shouts that this is just futile resistance. On the lower deck, his crew just looks up in complete confusion as the junk starts falling from the sky. Because Genius's plan was simple, to use the water explosion to toss debris onto the star of their ship. Suddenly, the enemy crew is simply overwhelmed by flying barrels and even broken planks. Even the captain gets hit on the head and shouts that this is literally a rain of trash. One of his poor crewmates is simply crushed by a mad barrel, screaming in shock, and Genius does not slow down immediately, orders a second volley to keep the pressure. The second salvo strikes the water, a new wave of debris rises from it, rushing straight at them. Their captain fell to his knees and grumbles that with all this trash, they can't even move. His monologue is interrupted by a bottle flying straight into his face, a truly poetic moment, and it is F. And finally it dawns on him, she was dumping the mass not for speed, but to free up space for ammunition. Meanwhile, in the whirl of chaos, one of the Genius's crew activates some magical octopus map. Here is the result. The deck is filled with unconscious sailors, buried under a mountain of junk. Returning to the communicator, Jinna smugly explains her strategy of trash domination to her rival. The crew, accustomed to onboard salvos, did not expect an attack to rain down on them from the sky. Her first assistant is simply stunned and enthusiastically praises her for coming up with such a crazy plan. She just slightly tipped her hat and said that the idea to turn trash into a weapon was suggested by her own team. And her first assistant can only give a big thumbs up, completely thrilled with his captain. Her opponent is on his knees, with the communicator in hand, trying to recover from the humiliating defeat caused by trash. Sitting amid a pile of garbage, he admits that he could not have predicted this crazy, senseless tactic. His entire team is unconscious, buried under a heap of junk, and he complains that he was hit by literal sea trash, his pride is completely shattered, and he can't even make himself laugh at how pathetic it all is. Jinya and her first assistant are eavesdropping, letting him stew a bit in his defeat due to the trash fuel, but she is not finished yet. Through the communicator, she tells him that she has one last word. He simply asked what she wanted, probably hoping she would boast a little more. Instead, Genius thanks him for disobeying Wash and deliberately missing with his attacking magic. The rival captain's eyes opened wide, he was completely exposed. She explains that his cannons could have sunk them, but he deliberately aimed to disable them, not destroy. This proves that he did not throw away soldiers' pride just to blindly follow orders. Smiling, she calls him a noble warrior and her greatest rival, a moment of sincere respect. He sharply snaps the communicator shut, completely bewildered by her words. Clutching his head, he realizes that she saw through every move he made, even his hidden act of mercy. Crewmates help him up, silently agreeing. Their defeat means they will all be expelled from the academy. But he reassures them, "Don't worry, I will take the blame and go report to Washa myself." He threw down his weapon and resolutely said that the failure to destroy the Genius was solely his fault. Then he grabs the white flag and insists that only he will be expelled because of this. And so he raises the white flag, thereby declaring the end of the battle. The Genius and her team can only watch in shock, unable to believe their eyes as the white flag is raised. That rival captain on the communicator with Washa effectively admits that Jinya just graduated at his expense. Meanwhile, Jinya and her entire team go wild, celebrating their hard-earned victory. The battle officially ended, and the two ships sailed side by side under the flag of truce. Her first assistant was wildly happy, pounding his fist into his palm and triumphantly shouting her name. The Genius bursts into tears, modestly saying that it is the team's merit, a true display of class. She casts a glance at her opponent's ship. He is just standing, leaning on the railing. This guy just looks back, his face calm and accepting. He is ready for the consequences, but his expression suddenly changes to surprise as he looks up at something. He is back in contact with Washa, and his face shows the news is bad. On the other end, Washa coldly reminds him of the agreement: lose to the pirates and you will be expelled. This rival captain is just sweating with fear, completely frightened by his commander's anger. He pretends to agree to the terms, but it is clear he wants to set his own condition. Turning away, he decisively declares, the failure is only his, he is the captain. He begged Washa, just expel me and spare my crew from any punishment. Washa replied with one contemptuous word, trash, cold as ice. The rival captain froze in surprise when Washa said the conversation was officially over. But then Washa himself appears on the deck and says he has changed his mind about the expulsion. His opponent froze in disbelief, only awkwardly shouting the rank of his commander. And it is then that he notices Vasher is holding a weapon and looks completely merciless. The eyes of this opponent widened in horror when he realized that his really was about to happen. But as soon as everything calmed down a bit, a third giant warship docked nearby, and everything suddenly became much more complicated. This captain opponent is simply stunned, staring at his communicator and unable to believe what he sees. On Golden Chains, Jinya and her first assistant watch in horror as the situation gets worse. Because Vosha's ship suddenly opened fire, tearing a huge hole straight through his subordinate's vessel. In despair, the opposing captain shouts to the crew, "Jump into the sea," while their ship is breaking apart. Then a colossal explosion completely destroys the warship without any mercy. Jinna and her first assistant press themselves to withstand the shockwave from the sudden, brutal explosion. She shouts the name of her rival, horrified by what she just saw. But her first assistant points with a finger, "Look at what is happening now." The combat ship Washa breaks through the debris, and the only goal left shines with golden links. Having destroyed the previous victim, the massive ship directs its gaze straight at them. On its deck stands Washa himself, looking like a mad commander ready for the second round. Jinna and her team instantly recognize this is Washa's personal flagship. They are doomed. Meanwhile, the enemy captain, barely surviving the explosion, clings to a floating fragment. Washa only grumbles that exceptions are too soft a punishment for those who have stained his hands. He points directly at Jinna's, snaps his fingers, and loudly says that she will go nowhere. His ship deploys a whole line of magical cannons, ready this time to finish the job properly. One of his subordinates nervously approaches, with a trembling voice calls the commander and asks a question. The poor guy asks if this is really allowed in a training battle, especially against a subordinate of a former admiral. Washa simply places his hand on his shoulder, and you seem to feel the energy. "Shut up, or you're next." Washa leans closer and explains to his subordinate that this is simply a necessary evil to stop the pirates a true speech, for the greater good, from a complete psycho. The poor fellow stammers out a frightened agreement, arguing with such a disheveled human bird would mean the end of his career. When the encouraging words died down, Washa's flagship unleashed a real barrage of magic right at the Golden Links. Meanwhile, the opponent's captain and his crew are just trying not to drown among the wreckage of their own ship. He looks in complete horror, realizing that the genius crew is suffering because of him. This Golden Lynx is completely shredded by the attack. Explosions tear its deck and sails. From the water, her rival snatches his communicator from his hands and shouts to the genius, "Just run and save yourself." The genius categorically refuses, saying she will never leave him here to die. She understands, now it's no longer about him. Washa is trying to silence everyone who saw what he did. Nodding her hat, Genius declares that helping people is the pride of her pirate crew, and they do not retreat. Her rival simply froze in silence, completely moved by her mad suicidal courage. Her first assistant shouts, in panic, that the ship will not withstand another such blow under any circumstances. Suddenly, her communicator rang again. It was a call from Washa himself. At the other end, the commander smiles condescendingly and asks if she likes her little pirate game. The genius just listens, her face hardening as he begins his villain's monologue. He thinks that he expected her to run away, but is grateful that instead she makes herself an easy target. Her eyes widen with rage. She finally understands the true depth of his cruelty. Your female proudly boasts that their presence makes it much easier for him to clean up his mess, that is, to deal with her rival. When her ship is blown up again, he asks how she lives with the thought that her heroism is just killing everyone. With a truly creepy smile, he promises that her dirty pride will just scatter them all across the sea like trash. The genius is completely confused, stammering that his entire monologue is completely false. Her first assistant intervened and reminded that throwing trash into the sea is forbidden, and that was the perfect reference. The genius clenches his fist over the magical seal, and her determination instantly hardens. She turns to her team along with an ally with wings and says that she has a plan. In response, her first assistant raises a magical item and asks everyone to lend him their power. Turning to the present, the golden links are simply being smashed. Thick smoke is billowing from the deck. Washa is just mockingly laughing from his flagship, mocking the fact that all they can do is drown. He orders his men to open fire again, aiming to wipe them off the surface of the ocean forever. Another salvo crashes into the water with a roar right next to the already damaged ship genius. The hull is torn apart by the explosion, splinters fly everywhere. The vessel begins to break apart, but suddenly a huge object, like a cage, falls from the sky onto Washa's ship. Their winged comrade is now like a living kite soaring over the battlefield. Washa and his subordinate just stared upward in complete amazement. What is this new hell? Below in the water, her opponent and his crew are now cheering her on from the lifeboats. This only enraged Washa even more. He shouted at the crew to sink that miserable raft. Because Jinna and her first assistant are now on a tiny wooden platform rushing over the waves. She shouts orders, commanding her winged partner to make a sharp 70-degree turn. This winged ally sharply lanes, pulls the rope, and with incredible speed turns the raft around. They actually turned their partner into a living engine for a high-speed water ski raft. And now they are just circling around the battleship Washa, making laps around this giant, an absolutely crazy countermaneuver. Washer is completely losing his mind, trying to figure out what kind of crazy plan Genius might have. Genius just looks ahead, focused and sweating. This is a 1 in a million chance, and she knows it. In a brief flashback, she grins, throws off the tarpaulin, and shows the crew her grand plan. Below is a huge shattered magic cannon, and she shouts that this is exactly what they will use to fight back. Her winged ally and another teammate had every right to be shocked by this clearly doomed plan. Genius says that if they manage to launch this thing, they will be able to destroy the entire Washa fleet. But the tiny turtle companion points out the obvious. The cannon is broken, and they have no spare parts. With a sly smile, Genius says, "Oh, yes we do, because of course she has a plan for this." She loudly admits the rival's cannon is made of perfect materials, exactly what is needed to fix their own. And thanks to Washa's little tantrum, all those details now conveniently float in the sea. The winged crew member is tasked with flying out and retrieving all the necessary components from the wreckage. Another crewmate will use her powers to guide the flyer and dodge all attacks. The small golem-like ally was ordered to prepare the cannon mount to fill it with all the magic he can gather. And as soon as the parts come close, her first assistant skillfully pulls them closer. She activates her magical bracelet and literally transforms the material from the ocean into a cannon barrel. The saved part rushes to them and, like magic, fits back onto the base of their cannon. Returning to the present, their winged friend pulls the raft, on which the fully repaired super cannon proudly stands. This whole ridiculous scene is shown from above. The girl is used as an engine for the floating platform with the cannon. Washa looks through the spyglass and finally realizes that they are gathering parts to make a weapon. In fury, he sharply snaps shut his spyglass, completely humiliated by their counterattack digging in the trash. Washa, finally unable to bear it, orders to pour all the team's magic into the main cannon. He figured it all out. They are collecting parts, and one crucial detail ended up right in his sights. With a crazy smile, he decides to simply vaporize them as soon as they take the bait. One of his men notes that their escort ship is in the way, but Washa just brazenly says it's a convenient blind spot. And with that, he gives the order. A powerful magical blast erupts from his flagship's cannon. A colossal beam of pure energy tore across the ocean, aimed directly at the debris. It flies straight at their winged partner, who is still playing the role of the living engine of the kite. The genius screams in horror that he is shooting at his own people just to reach them. But her winged ally simply grits her teeth and extends her hand, a determined look on her face. She activates some magical ring, directing it straight at the very part of the cannon that Washa used as bait. This fragment pulled from the water instantly bursts outward magic, pulls it straight to her. Washa's explosion hits the ocean a fraction of a second later, missing both her and that part. From the impact site, a huge column of water shoots upward. It is clear how narrowly disaster was avoided. Among the wreckage, the enemy crew only stares in stunned silence at how it almost hit. However, Washa just maniacally laughs, clearly enjoying the complete chaos. He spread his arms wide and mockingly declared, "Nice try, but trash still remains trash." But then it starts to rain, and through the downpour, a familiar silhouette appears. Because their super cannon is now fully assembled, and the genius along with the mermaid-like ally are ready to open fire. Jinna looks at Washa's ship, and the expression on her face screams, "Time for reckoning." Her winged partner has the same look. They all together make this last attempt. Her ally, like a mermaid, casts one last determined glance now or never. Washa, on the other hand, reacts to this turn of events a bit less restrained, with a fierce scream, the genius gives the only important order: fire. Their famous junket cannon charges a huge ball of pure magical energy. Suddenly, a colossal beam bursts forth, whistling over the water and flying straight at Washa's flagship. From the recoil of the shot, they are almost knocked off the tiny raft. This thing has a real punch. It crashes right into the hull of the warship, tears the sails, and breaks the main mast. And then a huge explosion engulfs the center of the ship in a ball of fire and lightning. The explosion continues to tear the vessel to pieces, splinters and fragments flying everywhere. Several explosions in a chain reaction swept across the deck, completely destroying the warship from the inside out. One of Vosha's men shouts what is already obvious to everyone to the commander: the ship is finished. Vosher can only watch, his hand trembling as his precious, custom-built flagship is turned into a heap of scrap metal. He had planned to use the pirate treasure to strengthen it and conquer the fleet. That was the whole plan. And now he is completely hysterical, shouting that some miserable raft has defeated him. Overcome with pure cowardice, he tries to flee the ship, leaving his men behind. His entire crew is forced to get into lifeboats and watch their mighty vessel sink beneath the waves. But the rival captain's crew goes wild, shouting with all their hearts in honor of the genius. Even her rival froze in silence, whispering her name in complete admiration of what she had just done. Jinnah and her first assistant deservedly bumped fists. They managed to do the impossible. The whole team joins in, joyfully celebrating the victory won through teamwork, courage, and a pile of trash. After the fight, the first mate grumbled that for the growing team, they needed a bigger water distiller. The genius casually mentioned that on her father's ship there is a magical auto distiller they can simply use. Her first assistant is stunned that she knows how to use magical technology, while for her it is just an ordinary household appliance. While the rest of the team wildly celebrates, the genius just watches, puzzled by their extreme poverty. In a sudden flash of memories, the woman with cat ears stretched and noticed that her winged ally does not trust her. The winged ally moves so close that it becomes awkward and asks if the cat girl is even listening to her. He wakes from sleep, and the turtle on his shoulder reminds him that Jinnah is a person who loves cats. This immediately recalls how someone got so carried away sniffing a cat that the winged ally froze in horror. Then we see the past of the first assistant, how he, using his recycling powers, restores his hometown burned during bombings. He showed that he single-handedly repairs entire houses and rebuilds the whole district. His turtle worries that he is exhausting himself too much just to help everyone. But he just brushes it off, insisting that everything is fine, although he looks like he is about to collapse. Meanwhile, some long-nosed official caused a complete hysteria over a statement from Jinyaz. He is beside himself with rage. The pirate's daughter dared to enroll in their prestigious naval academy. However, her father calmly explains that her training will make her a great asset to the country. The young genius eagerly agreed. He is fully ready to join the navy to become stronger. Returning to the present, the townspeople he saved now offer to help him build a ship. One of the townspeople crossed all boundaries and directly asked if he would take responsibility for the genius. He boldly declares that he met her passion with his own, leaving the crowd in complete shock. The entire crowd immediately mistakenly perceives this as a passionate romance, a truly stunning misunderstanding. We rushed into a flashback where the mother of the first assistant desperately screams his name in horror. Because our boy lies among the rubble and looks up at her, completely stunned. She rushes to his side, gently embraces him, and asks what just happened here. Later in bed, he simply stared at his magical bracelet, trying to comprehend the disaster. He says he was just a curious little boy who, together with a friend, was testing his new powers. So he decided to use his transformation magic on a garbage cart, and everything got a bit out of control. Namely, he gathered a huge pile of old carts and junk, which now completely blocked the city gates. The view from above, like on the palm of a hand, shows his little experiment completely blocked the main road. All the townspeople, even his mother, froze, frightened and silent. This shock quickly thickens into fear as they whisper about his dangerous ability. But the boy simply does not understand this. Why suddenly is everyone so afraid of him? The crowd looms over them, demanding to know what he has done in their town. With a start, he jerked awake in bed. It turned out it was only a nightmare. And it turns out someone is there. Their winged comrade guards him while he was asleep. He grabs his head. The painful memories of that day still feel too real. That dream surfaced again along with it. Memories came alive about how everyone turned away from him and called his gift a curse. But raising his gaze, he only sees the winged ally leaning over him with sincere care. She gives him a bright smile and cheerfully wishes him good morning. Our guy is completely confused, asking what she is even doing in his room. His little turtle explained that she was just terribly worried because he wasn't waking up. Our guy is completely broken after the fight, lying unconscious on the raft next to his sleeping teammate. His hand twitches as he begins to regain consciousness. The memory slowly returns. Returning to bed, he quietly thanks the winged friend for watching over him while he was gone. And she simply melts when he gently pats her on the head, so heartfelt. His turtle companion clears its throat, ready to deliver very important news to them. Because a shadow official declared their demonstration fight successful and issued them a privateer patent. This first mate simply sighs with relief and celebrates that Genius has finally become a real licensed captain. He imagines her in full pirate glory, ready to become a legend like her dad. But the turtle sadly says that now that her dream has come true, his role is over. This thought hits our guy like a ton of bricks, and he just stares into space. So the winged ally has to explain everything to him. This means he can no longer stay at Jinya's. He is completely stunned and asks if they really have to part ways right here. Trying to be noble, he says there is nothing to be done. Jinya finally got what she wanted. But then he admits the real problem. He is an outlaw, and his presence would ruin her. Just being on her crew, and the fleet could completely revoke that hard-earned privateer license. The mood in the room just dropped. Even the turtle hid under the blanket. That's harsh. With new determination, he gets out of bed and points to his packed bag. Grabbing his things, he clearly decided what would happen next, and it shows. He announces that he will build a completely new sea city to meet her again on equal terms. And the winged ally simply smiled, fully supporting his absurdly grand new plan. With a new goal, our guy immediately gets to work and resolutely declares that he will rebuild everything from scratch. Meanwhile, Jinya stands alone on a massive stone pier and gazes into the water. She quietly utters her father's name, and it is clear inside her there is a struggle with something huge. It seems she forces herself to believe that this is exactly the outcome she truly wanted. At that very moment, the first assistant notices her, pulling a cart full of firewood. He asks what she is doing all the way here, and the winged ally peeks from behind his shoulder. The genius is completely stunned and addresses him with an extremely formal title. He kneels down, gets on her level, and asks what she is thinking. Her hands are tightly clenched, and that reveals how nervous she really is. After a minute of hesitation, she finally gathers courage and asks him about something completely unexpected, as if out of nowhere. She asks hopefully if she can go on a journey with him. This request simply burns out the electronic circuits in him and his winged ally. Our guy just froze, completely speechless and unable to comprehend what he just heard. A flock of birds spectacularly rose into the sky, as it was supposed to happen. Finally, he asked what she was talking about, reminding her that she just received a privateer license, but Jinya just looks back with an expression of unwavering determination. She says that it was thanks to him that she managed to return her father's ship. And now, being the official heir of the Seacat family, she wants to fulfill her father's dream. He asked what that dream was, and she shyly confirmed that it was her new mission. His father had a big, unfulfilled dream, to ask the kingdom to organize a massive garbage cleanup. She says that her dad, a Seacat, was essentially a state-sponsored pirate and received a lot of official support. His great goal is to enlist the help of the entire nation to clean the ocean from the pollution that plagues their home. Our guy is just listening attentively, absorbing this great revelation about her family's past. Virginia's expression faded. It was clear that the plan had encountered a serious, quite expected snag. In the flashback, it is seen how after graduation she enthusiastically presents her grand idea to a conceited marine official. And he, with a superior smile, essentially tells her that it's a nice idea, but impossible. The genius is completely shocked. Her lifelong dream was shattered in an instant. Then this official reveals the dirty secret of the kingdom and turns away from her. It turned out that behind the colossal industrial power of their country hides an equally colossal problem with garbage. They simply dump all their trash into the sea, and it gets worse every year. This whole council of corrupt old men cares only about their own pockets, not the environment. Surveying his new kingdom of junk, he vowed to build something truly impressive. His ultimate goal is now decided forever. He's going to create his own floating city, but this grand vision, which could have turned the whole world upside down, is suddenly cut off by a wave of dizziness. When Nicola's eyes slowly opened, he was completely stunned and half asleep whispered, "Where am I?" He still feels the rope biting into him and realizes the entire escape was only in his head. He is still tied to the raft, slowly realizing, yes, he is somehow still breathing. And then the terrible truth dawned on him. The whole epic escape plan turned out to be just a fever dream. In reality, he just relaxed on the raft and tries not to think about the fact that he was expelled forever. Turned out, he got so carried away with the practice of the skill of reworking that he completely forgot about everything else. And the reflection of his old self returns that sharp, focused look that appears when he is about to start building something. That's why he didn't notice the giant storm overhead at all, which was definitely going to kill him. Reacting quickly, he puts his skill into action and instantly pulls a rope out of the air. And he immediately finds himself in a fight for life with the fierce, turbulent sea. Because he tied himself to the raft, it was the only sensible move that saved him from becoming fish food. When the storm finally subsides, he begins to untie himself, already figuring out how to use the rope again. Suddenly he realized that the storm literally washed away everything he had managed to build, and nothing was left. But through the tears of despair on his face, only pure, unwavering determination could be read. As he drifts aimlessly, a small island suddenly emerges on the horizon, a beacon of hope. Knuckle frantically rows to the shore, rejoicing at the thought that he will finally set foot on land. With a relieved sigh, he steps onto solid ground, now officially a castaway. His relief was cut short when a strange dome-shaped structure towered in the middle of the island. A quick glance showed this island is just a sandbar that will be swallowed by water during high tide. Yet his curiosity was completely fixated on that strange dome, wrapped in vines. Up close, he cannot figure out whether it is a strange stone formation or some giant shell. Thinking that there might be useful materials inside, he immediately begins trying to open it. With a final jerk, the dome doors suddenly opened, and dust and vines scattered everywhere. Suddenly, a cloud of ancient dust burst out, and Knuckle began coughing wildly. Through the haze, he sees something moving and immediately thinks, "Oh, great, a monster," and that's it. Something slowly begins to peek out from the darkness inside the strange structure. And it's a tiny turtle, yawning, obviously the scariest animal one can imagine. This little guy says he has been sitting in that shell for an incredibly long time. Noko learns that this turtle has actually been alive for over 10,000 years, and that's just insane. Our guy is simply stunned. He can't contain his delight and excitedly tells what an incredible thing this is. But suddenly the turtle asks who is speaking, and Noko freezes. Did he just hear that? He just looks completely silent, trying to understand what the turtle is saying to him. Then full panic sets and he thinks he has finally lost his mind here. After gathering his thoughts, he politely introduced himself to the talking reptile. The turtle calls himself Aspidoclin and looks quite self-satisfied. Nokul immediately suggests nicknames, and they shake hands because, of course, that's how it is. Aspie notes that arriving on a raft is, to put it mildly, quite reckless, but Nokul just proudly puffs out his chest and says, "Don't worry, I have the skill to recycle." This turtle has no idea what that is, so Nokul decides to show. He heads to the shore to gather materials and says he is also starving. Using his skill, he splits several pieces of driftwood and finds a few rusty nails inside. Aspie just stands completely bewildered and watches as Nokul begins piling up a heap of real trash. Nokul picked up the ring with a confident grin and said to his new turtle friend, "Watch closely." He extended his hand forward, released his power, and dramatically shouted, "Recycle." The little turtle Aspie named Judges flops onto the sand, completely stunned by the sudden light spectacle. These materials on the beach instantly begin to gather into a completely new form. And Bam Nokul holds a perfect fishing rod in his hands and explains his skill from trash to treasure. He immediately casts the rod, and Aspie admits that this is really a very useful power. This ancient turtle seems deeply thoughtful, stroking his non-existent beard. Aspie then suggests making another fishing rod. 2 people will catch much more fish. Nokul gets a little embarrassed and says that the turtle can't quite hold the fishing rod. But his mind freezes when he realizes something is very, very wrong. Because Aspie is now glowing and asks him to just wait a second. A powerful flash of light threw Nokul backward, and he fell onto the sand with a crash. When the dust settled, the girl with the shell on her head asked if this form helped more. Our guy's head seemed to short-circuit. His jaw just dropped when he saw the turtle girl. Aspie immediately asks for a fishing rod, but first suggests reworking some clothes for obvious reasons. Embarrassed, Nokul throws a rag at her, telling her to cover up before she gets sick, then lays down. Putting on the dress, he casually remarks, "By the way, I'm a guy." Nokul just squinted, said it looked normal, handed over the second stick, and decided not to ask questions. After preparing the gear, the second line splashed into the calm sea water. And now they are just relaxing. The 2 of them catch fish, and Aspie smiles and admits that this quiet life isn't so bad at all. Nokul can't hold back. He just has to know how the turtle suddenly grew into a human body, and he asks what happened to Aspie. Aspie begins to tell his whole life story, which seems to stretch very, very far into the past. We return to the times when this tiny sandy spit was a huge, life-filled island with a smoking volcano. It turned out the locals worshipped him as the god of the great land. Quite a good role. In Nokul, the brain seemed to seize up at the word god, and Aspie instantly came to the defense, loudly demanding at least some respect. But he admits that the golden age of worship did not last forever because, when his followers lost faith and left the island, his divine power began to noticeably weaken. Without his magic, which held the island, the entire island suddenly sank beneath the waves. Now he feels completely unnecessary in this modern world and calls himself simply trash. The word trash hit painfully, and he clenched his fist in irritation, but yet Nokul raised his big thumb up and called his story absolutely incredible, which greatly surprised Aspie. Our guy explains it to him. Trash is just another word for a bunch of possibilities. Ask, 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 ask. Aspie is sincerely touched by this funny, optimistic view of what it is like to be washed ashore along with. So everything is decided. Nokul realized that it was time for him to tell his sad story. The story begins right in that huge kingdom of Waldorf, which he once called home. Inside on the plate lies only a fish skeleton, like a reminder of that royal luxury he left behind. And here is his brother Giustra. They tell him how much more productive meetings are without Nokul. The flashback shows how Nokul constantly burst into council meetings with his inventions made from trash, trying to fight pollution. Giustra said mockingly that if Nokul loves trash so much, then let him die in it. And the advisor suddenly doubted, is it wise at all to literally give away rights to an entire sea of trash? Giustra just waved off the advisor's concern and said with a confident smile that there is no need to worry about it. Swallowing wine, he realizes, in the history of the kingdom, no one has ever survived in that sea of trash. He probably imagines that Nokul is now desperately starving and madly missing the castle's exquisite dishes. But in reality, our guy is just calmly skewering a freshly caught fish for dinner. And he bites into a huge, tasty piece. It doesn't look like he is sad here at all. He and Espy are having a great time, enjoying their simple but incredibly delicious food. They even filled a whole bucket. The local fish seemed completely devoid of survival instinct. While frying another fish, Aspie couldn't hold back and said how incredibly useful that processing skill is. It reminds Nakalu that they need a better way to start a fire, so he aims at one of the fishing rods. With a flash, it instantly turns into a perfect bow drill, ready to spark. The magical part took a moment, but the real physical labor literally worked him into a sweat, which greatly amused Aspie. Completely exhausted, he angrily looks at the ring and dreams of simply making a more convenient tool. Then he remembers how he tried to build a complex distiller that just fell apart into a useless pile of scrap. Aspie notices that the fire is good, but to really live here, they will need much more. It seems to have inspired an idea in her, and she clenches her fist, feeling a new determination. She stands up and smilingly says she has a gift for him as a token of gratitude for the tasty fish. Confidently winking, she promises to give him something incredibly convenient. Nokul just looks back, completely not understanding what this powerless god turtle could offer. At that moment, a huge pile of floating logs in the water suddenly begins to fiercely break apart. Nokul is already back at work. He turned on recycle and is gathering a fresh batch of materials. Nokul skillfully creates a giant planter and asks if this is exactly what Aspie meant. Aspie gives the go-ahead and tells him to fill it with the precious soil of the island. Then he reveals his old shell is actually a secret chamber left by his former followers, and inside a whole garden of quirky fruits that Nokul immediately wants to eat. Aspie explains the plan is to take a seed from one of the fruits, then stick it into that bucket with soil they just prepared. Next he makes Nokul drag the entire structure onto a raft, and he himself only becomes more puzzled by it. Our guy starts to get a little worried about where this is all leading. He kind of doesn't believe it. They really are going to start a farm right here and now on a floating pile of logs, but Aspie just asks him to relax while his tiny helmet shell begins to glow ominously. He freezes in a pose like a backup dancer, as if announcing that the real show is about to begin. And with a shout, he releases the blessing of the great earth directly onto the raft. The soil in the pot immediately begins to boil and bubble, and in a matter of seconds, a tiny sprout suddenly jumps out from under the ground. Nokul was in shock, pointing at the plant that grew instantly, and could not believe it. He instantly asks, is this the powerless divine magic of Aspie in action? And at that very moment, the human figure of Aspie dissolved into the air, leaving an empty dress on the sand. He again became a tiny turtle, confessing that he was completely powerless and had regressed so much for that dramatic entrance. Aspie says that if he puts soil from the island on the raft, he will be able to call it earth and consecrate it. He also says that the fruits they grow are simply full of moisture, and this finally solves their water problem. Aspie explains that these magical fruits are like a whole pharmacy that prevents them from getting scurvy on the road. Nokul gently picks up his tiny, ancient companion of god level. Our guy shines with happiness and tells Aspie how glad he is that they are now a team. For a moment, the 10,000-year-old turtle looks genuinely touched by this kindness, but Aspie instantly became embarrassed and, blushing, tried to change the subject. Apparently, he was not used to praise. This tender moment was suddenly broken by Aspie's shout, "The tide is coming very fast." Nokul immediately panicked, shouting that more materials urgently need to be gathered for the raft. When he starts collecting trash, Aspie asks if he really needs all of it, but Nokul insists that it is absolutely necessary. His tiny friend points to even more trash and wonders, what is the plan here? Without saying a word, Nokul dives back into the water and grabs every drifting log he sees. After a long night of building, they simply rest on their renewed raft and point at the stars. When morning came, the raft looked impressive, and Nokul deservedly gave a thumbs up. This is no longer just a raft, he crafted a full-fledged deck with a mast, and all of it from trash. Aspie looks a little sad, thinking that Nokul is about to sail away and leave him behind. But suddenly Nokul firmly sets his foot on the island's sand again. This move completely confused the little turtle. Assuming the worst, Aspie begins his dramatic farewell speech and says that their time was short but sweet. He wishes the child a safe journey, fully resigned to being left behind again on this sandy shoal. Well then, Nokul just slaps his hand on his shell and says, "All right, Aspie, let's go." This turtle just had a blue screen freeze in his head. Wait, he's not being left behind. This little god turtle instantly panics and loudly demands to know why. Damn it, he's being kidnapped. But our guy just scratches his head and explains that he thought Aspie probably also wanted to join the trip. But with a heavy heart, Aspie says that, unfortunately, he cannot go with Nokul on his journey. He was the god of this great land, he explains, but he could not protect his home at all. Nokul just puts him on his shoulder and says that all this is now ancient history. This old god looks completely puzzled and asks if it really concerns his past failures. Our guy explains that as the islanders developed, they simply outgrew the need for Aspie's magic. He turns around with a huge smile and says that Aspie's powers will really come in handy on his journey. Noko looks him straight in the eyes and promises, "I won't let you be useless anymore." Instead, he is going to remake Aspie's power and give him a completely new purpose. And the little turtle god is simply stunned, his eyes fill with real tears like. Aspie tries to hide his face, muttering that he has no choice, but in reality, he totally agrees. For the first time in many years, the wind finally fills the sail, ready for a new journey, as they F. When they finally sailed away, Aspie said he would lend his divine power to this human boy. Now that they are on the move, Nokul, holding a ring over a coil of rope, suddenly got an idea. He thinks that with such a big raft, he can finally craft that thing he has been thinking about for a long time. With the familiar shout, "Remake," he releases a powerful burst of creative energy. This rope instantly twisted and wove itself into an elegant net. And bam, the perfect rope railing appeared, and the raft became much safer. Aspie, now securely tied to the pole, casually says that this is a hammock. Nokul is insanely enjoying his new hammock, finally able to sleep comfortably after a long time on hard logs. Suddenly he was thrown back onto that old raft, where every wave could throw him into the sea. Even on the new deck, he marvels at how incredibly stable their entire structure turned out to be. Aspie smugly confidently explains, his blessing of the great land is essentially a divine shock absorber for the raft. Realizing that he can build without overturning the raft, Nokul felt a wild surge of creative energy. But even before he could start his next project, his body decided otherwise. This guy decides to give himself a short, well-deserved break in the middle of the endless sea. And he immediately switched off, like a turned-off light, peacefully rocking in his brand-new trash hammock, which instantly gives way, and he with a loud groan banged his head on the deck. He sits down, still confused, and Aspie panics, pointing upwards, trying to get his attention. Nokul raises his head and sees a giant winged silhouette blocking the sun. Two huge feathers slowly fall onto the deck, a sign that very unwelcome company has approached them. His face instantly turned pale. He understood what he was looking at and very much hopes he is mistaken. The camera rises along the back of the winged woman, described as a winged female figure. Her legs are not at all human, they are huge, terrifying bird talons, ready to tear apart. In the old drawing it is visible. This creature is a legendary beast, known for attacks on people. This creature appears in full glory, and the text confirms their worst fears. It is a harpy. She looks down at them with eerie calm, assessing her future victims. Nokul froze in pure horror, barely managing to utter the name of that creature. Aspie asks if they are really that dangerous, and our guy admits he is seeing one for the first time. They say harpies are famous for seemingly just destroying entire armies of ordinary soldiers. They are actually considered natural enemies of all humanity. Well, isn't that wonderful? Without hesitation for a moment, she simply dove like a bomb right onto their tiny raft made of debris. Our guy instantly panics when he realizes his processing skill is too slow to handle this. So he grabs the nearest junk, a pipe and a board, muttering that there is no other choice. His brilliant plan is simply to throw all sorts of debris at the approaching monster and shout for it to retreat. This, of course, does not slow it down even a bit. It gracefully weaves through the flying trash as if it were a slow ballet. Nockwell is increasingly boiling. With irritation, his best defense literally comes down to throwing trash. In a moment of despair bordering on genius, he grabs Aspie, thinking this time it will definitely work. And he just swallows the 10,000-year-old turtle god right in front of the harpy, and Aspie screams in horror. Without any effort, the harpy kicks Aspie into the ocean like a soccer ball. That's the whole divine intervention. Nockwell is simply furious, yelling at her for daring to kick his turtle friend. Completely ignoring his rage, the harpy just gracefully lands on the deck right in front of him. She just looks at him with an anxiously calm, almost bored expression. Her giant claws dig into the deck, and Nockwell stands next to two, sticks a reliable plan. He glanced at the ring. Cold reality struck. He has no chance at all in this fight. But even knowing this, he gathers his willpower because he understands he has no choice but to try. With an expression of pure determination, he activates the skill of reworking the board and sticks, which he transforms into a giant wooden paddle, demanding to know what she wants and insisting that he has no money. This harpy completely ignores his giant paddle. She simply points to the hammock. Our guy just stands as if stunned and asks if she means the hammock he just made. She just looks back with that cold, indifferent gaze, as if the answer is obvious. Then she yawns widely, spreads her wings, and says she wants to use them. Noko is still ready to fight to the death, but the legendary monster is just waiting for its moment. His face is like a living picture of what is happening right now. And without any warning, she simply pressed his head right into the rope net. He just stands and watches while she settles comfortably, demanding to know what is going on here. At that moment, the soaking wet and furious Aspie climbs back on board and shouts that he was used as a projectile. Nockwell immediately catches him, feverishly apologizing and admitting that he was desperate. Aspie then asks if this legendary monster, which destroys entire armies, is really not that dangerous. Meanwhile, the same legendary beast is simply sleeping soundly in a hammock. She sleeps so peacefully that it seems as if there is not a single thought of murder in her head. Nockwell cautiously tries to get her attention, probably to ask her to leave right now. Upon waking, she calls herself Mermersig, a name so long that the tongue gets tangled. He is still wary, suspiciously asking if she is sure she did not come here to attack him. But Mermersig just stretched and smiled, saying that she actually does not hate people at all. It turned out that her only true passion in life is simply to take a good nap. A flashback shows how she was literally kicked out of the clan for being too lazy. So she has just been wandering the sky ever since, looking for a cozy place where she can lie down and rest. Noko sobs uncontrollably, completely moved by her tragic story that she is a professional napper. He wipes his tears and whispers to Aspie that he completely understands him. They are both outcasts, each in their own way. So he formally introduces himself and Aspie, trying to make their new hanger-on feel at home. Mermersig asks where this garbage boat is even heading, and Nockwell admits we are just drifting. But he clarifies he has a big dream, to turn this raft into a real floating city. Little turtle brain Aspie just shuts down from the sheer audacity of this statement. Even the legendary beast, confused, asks, did he really just say city? Nockwell explains that in his kingdom people strangely and openly refused to reuse perfectly usable garbage. So his main plan is to take his ring and build an entire city out of junk, just to prove that he is right. He is determined to prove that even worthless things can be used to help people and build a nation. Mermersig just watches him, clearly impressed by this boy's incredibly ambitious dream. The faith of our guy is absolutely unwavering. He is completely serious about this junk city. After a moment of thought, she turns and says what she has decided. With a theatrical flourish, she announces that this raft will become her new nest. Congratulations on the new roommate. Nockwell is just shocked, asking if she really plans to move in with them. She explains if he builds the city, she will finally be able to nap in peace and no one will bother her. Her imagination instantly transports her to a luxurious canopy bed, and just the thought makes her salivate. Nockwell just winked, welcoming another exile like himself to their very strange team. He gets to work and asks if she has any skills she could bring to their new cooperative. Before she could answer, her eyes froze on something floating in the water nearby. Easily, almost indifferently showing her talent, she crushes a coconut as if it were a grape. Then she hands them the freshly squeezed juice and asks if they want a drink. Nokwal just froze at this, but her attempt to be delicate turned into a disaster, and accidentally simply smashed the wooden bowl with the same effortless strength. Murmursig gets embarrassed and admits it's much easier for her to break things than to be gentle. Aspie says she destroyed the only bed, and Nokul simply replies, "I'll make another." She asks if he is serious, and our guy confirms only there is one tiny problem. He points to an empty drawer, recalling that he threw all his building materials right at her head. To craft something new, he needs wood, fabric, and rope, but all of them are currently in the sea. And that means they have to continuously scour the endless ocean in search of even more high-quality trash that can be saved. Hearing this, an idea came to Murmursig, and Nokul just strokes her head and gently says, "Don't worry." Then she tilted her head with a determined expression, and our guy was completely confused. And with a huge flap of wings, she simply takes off into the sky like a rocket. Nokul and Aspie can only helplessly watch as their new roommate flies away into the distance. A close-up of her face shows she is now clearly focused on her goal. Everyone who tried to expose this mess simply mysteriously disappeared very subtly. This official essentially told her to give up, and thereby completely broke the spirit of young Jinya. Turning to the present, she confesses with a wry smile that she always expected rejection. This whole conspiracy is just too much for our guy. He won't be able to digest everything at once. He asks why she should give up if getting help from the kingdom is her only chance, right? She quietly admits that was the case until she met him. Traveling together completely changed her perspective on the problem, she explains. She saw how he decisively tackled the garbage problem and wondered why such a person was expelled. She suddenly realized this world overwhelmed with garbage really doesn't need any government program, it needs him. Our guy is completely confused and insists that he is not that special. But Jinna quietly disagrees, her hands clasped behind her back. She explains that his power of recycling gave her a new life after she was treated like garbage. Now she strives to be the one who will help him fulfill his dream. Her story trembles nervously as she asks if he will be okay with this because she wants to be with him from now on, a frank, complete confession. The first assistant just stands and watches, completely stunned by her request. The genius simply raises his eyes to him and waits for his answer with that decisive look. While he tries to find the words, the winged ally watches from the side. She is about to step forward, but suddenly a cry comes from the ocean, interrupting them. He turns around and sees a ship approaching, and it is full of familiar faces. Those are the townspeople he saved. They wave and cheer joyfully to him from the deck. He and Jinya froze in amazement, seeing an entire village appear. Turned out they borrowed a military ship and raised from the bottom the wreckage of her father's old vessel. The crew on the pier joyfully announced that they have enough materials to build homes for everyone. He just stands and looks at the huge pile of recycled parts, completely overwhelmed. Our guy barely processes this and, embarrassed, asks, do they really want to put a star on everyone? This leading resident of the town raises his thumb up and says that his enthusiasm inspired everyone to join him. The sudden arrival of the entire fan club simply left him speechless. Then one of the girls admits that she told everyone he was coming, and they all just decided to come too. Still stunned, he asks Jinya if she is really sure about all this, because suddenly in his head appears the image of a sinister prince whom everyone avoided and feared. In panic, he warns her that association with him will make them all wanted criminals, but the main townsman just slapped him on the back and said, "Stop this nonsense." He just laughs, declaring that now they are all sea lions, and they don't care at all that they are called pirates. Genius just looks at him, sincerely touched by this unexpected, passionate display of loyalty. She tells him that everyone here feels exactly the same as she does. Another villager intervenes. It is not the kingdom that will save this miserable world, but he. This leader agreed, saying that his conviction once again gave them all a reason to hope. And Jinya delivers the final blow and tells him, "No one here considers you some kind of curse." His eye opens wide, pure shock from being accepted finally overwhelms him. A slow, relieved smile blooms on his face as the burden of the past finally lets go. The genius thanks everyone for him, her hands clasped in sincere gratitude. She turns to him with a huge smile as if asking, "Well, is that a yes?" In response, he extends his hand. His magical bracelet comes to life with. Raising his hand, he solemnly accepts each of them into the crew. And so the work begins. Someone walks along the plank, laid over the saved boards. Everyone joins in, carrying supplies, while the winged ally swiftly circles overhead. During a short water break, the companion turtle waddles over with a very important question. The turtle notes, now that they are building a completely new nation, it probably needs a name. Our guy taps his head, trying to come up with a resonant name for their new nation. And suddenly inspiration strikes like a classic light bulb above the head. He proudly proposes, Super Hyper Fun Max Recycle Nation, a name so bad it becomes a work of art. He simply radiates pure, absolute confidence in this terrible, terrible idea. The genius and the winged ally voice their terrible names, one of which includes Living Dead, and our guy's soul just flies out of his body. This brainstorming session is a complete disaster, and he clutches his head in agony. Finally, the winged ally intervenes and suggests simply calling it Noah after himself, Knuckle. It seems both the genius and the turtle support this much simpler and smarter idea. A huge smile blooms on his face. Yes, Noah is easy to remember and actually sounds good, W. Raising his hands in triumph, he officially announces his decision. Standing before their newly built floating city, he prepares to announce the big news, solemnly announcing that from now on their sea country will be called Noah. Genius just can't believe his eyes. Their little raft has turned into this huge arch, and he confirms that it is almost ready, then we. And suddenly a flash of memory, 5-year-old Rose Arkane calls her prince. And we see a much younger Nokal Zedra Arcane. He is only 14 years old, and he is completely confused. It turns out little Rosa has a habit of literally following him everywhere, even to the bathroom, without any boundaries. She just puffs out her cheeks, not at all remorseful for her clinginess. In response, she instantly lunged at him with all her might, shouting that he is mean for wanting a moment alone. These two are just a complete mess, waving their arms and legs and shouting outside the castle walls. A few years later, 11-year-old Rose with a slight smile suggests, His Highness should probably go study at the Imperial Academy. Memory, 20-year-old Knuckle with a stone expression, seriously crafted some kind of wind device. He found himself in a huge landfill, and Rose tells him that the cursed prince is wasting his efforts even trying. The voice of his brother Zeus echoes in his head, leave ruling to the professionals, you are not the kind to be king. Rose just casually lets slip that he has a completely rotten character without any embellishments. Then she began to lecture, dignity is inherited, not something that can simply be earned by work. He squeezes his invention tighter. It is clear that he is tired of this conversation. With his back to her, he tells her to leave, warning that if she is seen with him, it will ruin her reputation. But Rose instantly and loudly refuses and declares that she will do whatever she wants, and this completely shocks him. She winks and announces that her new personal mission is to instill some dignity and knowledge in him to make him a real prince. Returning to the present time, the huge, fully built Noah's Ark proudly stands at the pier. Noko does not take his eyes off the sheet of paper, and Jinya looks over his shoulder in full pirate attire. The whole gang has gathered and asks him what is so deeply settled in his thoughts. Turns out he is completely surrounded by peasants, all shouting their demands regarding the laws of the new nation. With a stack of thick applications in his hands, he grumbles and Jinyas that this is much more work than the imperial duties he skipped. He simply decides to start with something simple. He takes on the application submitted by a mother with a small son. The drawing of this boy requests to place a demon cannon in his room to fight villains, a solid, well-thought-out proposal. Nokal just looks at the paper with a completely expressionless face, while Jinya watches meanwhile. She noted with how much Noah has grown, it's only a matter of time the kingdom will sooner or later pay attention to them. The thought of another military clash makes him grab his head. He understands that they need a defense plan as soon as possible. But the winged ally steps forward, saying his forces are the key to taming external threats. The winged ally decisively declares she is ready to test the newly revived power, and above her head hovers a shining symbol. She calls it an invisible barrier, and when she activates it, the entire arch begins to become invisible. But the effect lasts only about 5 seconds, then the gas completely knocks it out, so Jinya declares it completely useless. Noko looks completely unimpressed, while the winged ally explains that she needs more faith to shield the entire island from enemies. And then one of the villagers interrupts, saying the rest of the crew has a few questions for her. And by a few, they meant a real crowd, shouting, demanding explanations about taxes, trade routes, and who is on kitchen duty. A sudden wave of bureaucracy completely broke Noko. He just collapsed and left a dent in the shape of a person on the wall. The genius and his winged ally just look down at him, defeated, and he mumbles that he didn't sign up for this. Lying on the deck, he realized with horror that he really should have been studying, as Rose said. Upon hearing this name, the winged ally immediately fired the million-dollar question, who is Rose? From the floor, Knuckle muttered that she is the girl he saved from that garbage landslide. We learn that Rose Arkin is his cousin, a true wunderkind, who at just 11 years old became the assistant to the Prime Minister. This girl radiated such charisma that people simply adored her and even called her the Golden Rose. This little friend puts two and two together and understands that Rose is probably the real reason for our guy's exile. Nokul simply loses his head over this proposal, while his companion points out the obvious: people loved her much more than him. He is in such deep denial that he begins to insist that he doesn't even have a cousin, a fantastic way to cope. But the thought of that accident does not give him peace. Is Rose okay after all this time? Suddenly, a girl in a very familiar, high-ranking naval uniform appears before them. She asks Nokul if he really doesn't recognize her, and he just looks completely confused. Meanwhile, somewhere in a tavern, pirates gossip about what happened after Nokul's exile, and the genius eavesdrops behind the bar counter. In the capital, a court official stands in complete shock as he delivers the bad news about Rose. The scene shifts to Arkin Castle here. It seems a serious political crisis is brewing. Someone pounds their fist on the table and angrily shatters a stack of documents. This is a minister named Shord, and he is simply losing his head, demanding to know what is going on. He rages, arguing with a fleet officer in a mask, because some nobody she recommended is now ruining his reputation. The guy completely breaks down, grabs his face with his hands, and whines about what a trouble this is for him. Suddenly, a calm voice interrupts his hysteria and asks, "What is all this shouting about?" And this is Nokul's brother, the second Prince Euster, and he is not impressed by this spectacle at all. Shord instantly straightens up, and sweat pours down him. A royal person is here to see his little scene. He bows deeply, pretending he was just upset over some trifle. But Zeustra does not mince words, immediately asks if it is true that Rose has disappeared. Shord instantly reassures him, "Don't worry, I already have the situation under control." His brilliant plan is to contact the Lord of the Last Island Vega, a suspicious masked guy named Goldor. Eyes of Zuster narrowed, he knew exactly who it was, the notoriously infamous human trafficker. The logic is simple. Thanks to Goldor's immense wealth and connections, finding Rose will be easy. With a single simple move, he settled it. Zeus returns and leaves, leaving Shord alone with his affairs. As soon as the prince disappeared, a completely sinister smile appeared on Shord's face. He is not just looking for Rose, he is betting everything that the human trafficker will show the exact location of her whereabouts. In fact, he secretly dreams that she would be bought and sold for him. That would be the most convenient option. In flashes of memory, his hidden resentment is revealed. He always hated her for defending the trash Prince Nokul. In the memory, Minister Shire tells the horrified Rose that he only saved her because her crying annoyed him. She insists that no normal person would ever agree to go save an official outcast. With a disgusting smile, Shord hints that the infamous human trafficker named Goldor might have taken the prince. He essentially pushed her right onto that man's ship. He knew that a monster like Goldor sees people only as merchandise. Here is his secret hope, that Rose would be chained and sold for him. That would be so convenient. Turning to the present, the naval officer goes crazy when she realizes Rose disappeared on the very island of Last Vega. Genius quietly nods. This is exactly the story she overheard that evening in that tavern. Her hand clenches into a fist, anger and determination surge, sweeping away everything in their path. A sudden flash of memories, and before her eyes appears young, smiling Rose, reminding us who is at stake. Nokul suddenly calls his entire team to stand at attention. He looks incredibly serious. He confesses, although they need to establish laws for Noah, he is about to ask for something completely selfish. Pointing at himself, he grimly declares, right now he's going to Last Vega to save Rose. But his entire team just smiles in response. They are fully behind this rescue mission. Genius lights up and exclaims that the sea cats will never and under no circumstances ignore human traffickers. Even the winged partner is delighted. He fully supports her in this mission. Overwhelmed by their dedication, Nokul quietly thanks everyone who has his back. The decision is made. The game board slams into place. They set off immediately. Their huge NOAA arc is heading to the infamous island Last Vega. On the deck, Nokul is gazing into the waves, his face clenched with stern determination. And in the last flashback, young Rose fiercely defends him, telling everyone how he always protected her from haters. With a resolute promise, Nokul firmly says that now it's his turn to save Rose, and she just has to wait for him. Their massive NOAA ship cuts through the waves now. It is fully committed to this extremely risky rescue mission. Genius announced that they have finally arrived at Last Vega, and Noko is burning with impatience to land ashore. But one of his teammates immediately crossed that out, warning that it won't be that simple. It turns out Las Vegas is an exclusive resort for scoundrels. Only those approved by the human trafficker Goldor can land. Moreover, the entire port is teeming with armed trading ships, so a frontal attack is impossible. Nokol is already on the edge, desperately searching for a way to get onto the tightly guarded island. Even Jinya looked worried for a second, finally realizing how complicated their situation is. Suddenly she comes alive and insists that they do have a plan to Noko's surprise. She mysteriously tells him to follow her, leads him aside to show the brilliant move of her master. And their brilliant, first-class infiltration strategy is a single lonely barrel drifting in the middle of the ocean. Nokol is inside now and looks as if doubting every life choice that brought him to this moment. He is just sweating profusely, as if radiating pure, genuine energy of this is so humiliating. Genius disguised as real trash proudly explains the plan to his winged ally. This barrel will float past the guards along with the rest of the trash, opening a direct path to the island for him. As soon as he steps ashore, he will instantly blend in with the island workers who constantly haul identical barrels. From there, all he has to do is shove himself into a cart and smuggle himself straight into Goldor's casino. He is forced to admit the plan is really solid, but he needs an answer to one very important question. Our guy immediately asks, why was he the one shoved into the barrel and left alone? Ingenia says she is seasick and will definitely fail. Her body seems to deflate and turn into a pile of clothes, a perfect excuse. The winged friend suddenly announced she is going to nap and by doing so, seems to exit the stealth mission. Another crew member kindly notes that only one person fits in the barrel, and Nokol falls into despair. But Nokol tries to cheer himself up, insisting that it's better to be human cargo than to do nothing. Finally, he resolutely raised his fist and shouted that he fully supports this extremely worthy plan. And they just push him off the deck. The prince is rolled in the barrel. He screams and rolls straight into the ocean. It hits the water with a powerful splash, thus officially begins the most humiliating infiltration in history. He even manages to quietly wave goodbye, while the NOAA crew sincerely wishes him all the best from the deck. The genius looks worried, but the winged ally just confidently says that he will probably be fine. And now he just drifts alone, perfectly hidden among the rest of the ocean debris. Inside the barrel, his thoughts again fly to Rose, and with every second his determination grows stronger. He simply cannot understand how such a strong person could be held captive by a scoundrel like Goldor. Suddenly a noise came from above. His face became grim. He tensed and prepared for contact. But it was only him. He tosses the lid and surveys the island through a tiny spyglass. Through it he finally sees his goal, a huge casino, which is clearly the heart of Lastwiggy. On the street he is greeted as a known guest. A rich patron boasts that here you can buy everything for money. Welcome to Las Vegas, an island resort built entirely on vice and human trafficking. Suddenly an axe flies swiftly from the sky straight onto the raft. Then with a loud splash, an entire table falls into the water, a special delivery. Turns out Mermersig is rushing on a wild raid for trash, collecting junk for him. She sharply turns back and with impressive speed drops the last portion of the loot. Then she lands perfectly back on the deck, looking quite satisfied with her contribution. Nockwell is absolutely stunned by the pile of high-quality trash she brought in just minutes. He almost shines because he realizes that gathering this haul alone would have taken him half a day. She looks almost embarrassed, admitting that her family always called her slow and useless. Well, that's it, Z. Without hesitation, Nokol soothingly strokes her head and says she is incredible. Smiling broadly, he sincerely thanks her help really saved a lot of time. He looks her straight in the eyes and insists that she is neither slow nor useless at all. This praise is clearly different. She just blushes and enjoys every word. Burning with enthusiasm, Nokol immediately throws himself into work, ready to redo the whole pile at once. The ring on his finger suddenly flared with life as he tried to restore everything, but something was very wrong. The whole pile of junk suddenly gave a wild backlash, scattering fragments in all directions. Instead of raw materials, he accidentally created a glowing, chaotic shack chaos. The face of our guy is just a perfect picture of what, damn it, just happened. And then all this shaky mess instantly collapses right on him, to the huge horror of Aspie. Looking at the ruins, Murmur Sig admits that she was worried, she was afraid he wouldn't be able to handle it right away. Among the debris, one big thumb sticks out, a sign that he is somehow still alive there. Crushed under a board, he is completely confused. How could his skill have let him down so spectacularly? Aspie swims closer with a sad expression, as if knowing the reason for the failure. God Turtle points to a strange forearm guard and explains that part of that junk is made from some unrecognizable materials. Nokul shakes the dust off himself, completely bewildered by the concept of trash unfamiliar to me. Aspie stands over mysterious objects and confidently says that his skill in analysis will find out what they are. Aspie explains that the skill reprocessing works flawlessly with simple raw materials such as wood and rope. The problem begins when you try to process a complex pile of junk all at once. It's a recipe for failure and in Nokul's head it finally clicked. He understood why his big idea turned against him. He remembers how once he tried to reprocess a pile of magical armor, they just crumbled instead of reassembling. Our guy immediately gets upset, thinking he has reached the limit of his strength. But Aspie encourages him with a small speech, confessing that even God could do little when he just started. He says that the whole point is to know your strength and understand what is really possible. With new determination, Nokul realizes that his first step is to find out what his skill cannot handle. And now comes the most exciting moment of any adventure, sorting the trash. He instantly pulled in Murmursig, who now just stands there completely confused by this idea. Now having a clear plan, Nokul raises the ring he burns with determination and is ready to try again. He kneels before the disgusting pile of junk from the safe and swears that this time it will work. The ring flashes to life, and in his head there is only one idea: to build the best bed for their new roommate. But as soon as he focuses, a memory flashes in his mind, a very ornate, very familiar rocking chair. And there, like a true king, sits a man calmly reading a book in the middle of an incredibly luxurious room. The shot transitions to this luxurious room from his past, where the man looks up and calls this memory nostalgic. When the servant pours him a drink, the man smiles and says that this chair reminded him of something. Then this exquisite glass is placed on a small table right next to him. And the servant, with a mocking smile, begins to talk about His Highness Gistra and the disgusting trash prince. This man in the chair, probably Gistra, simply closes his eyes, a calm, knowing smile on his lips. The flashback suddenly throws us into a memory: two little once probably Gistra and Nokulaire fighting right by their mother's feet. Gistra lifts the book and immediately boasts about his supposed intellectual superiority. Now already an adult, he sprawls on the same throne and gloatingly revels in having claimed everything for himself. He even mockingly says that his brother wanted this chair, but in the end died on a log with a gem. And in the present, the raft quietly creaks on the water, as if it is a completely different world compared to that memory. But what kind of gift is this? Nokwal and Murmursig are relaxing comfortably in brand new, custom-made deck chairs. Their little raft has become a real floating terrace, even with an umbrella. Murmursig is sound asleep in her new bed and finally looks truly satisfied. Meanwhile, Noko lives to the fullest, calmly drinking from a coconut through a straw. Waking up, she admires with delight how he managed to make such a comfortable place out of a pile of junk. Our boy just lifts his sleep mask and proudly says that he imagined the best bed he knew. He sighs and honestly says, "This is just a copy, so it is unlikely to be as good as the real one." But Murmursig immediately sharply rejects this, insisting that he is completely wrong. Blushing a little, she admits to him that this happened to her for the first time. She really dreamed that her mother would hold her in her arms, all because of how safe that bed felt. She sincerely thanks Nokul and Aspie for their kindness, smiling truly gently. Nokul shines and shows a huge thumbs up, while Aspie, completely confused, looks away. Bringing everyone back to reality, Aspie anxiously asks what they will do next. She points to the obvious problem: to build a city. Much more is needed than just a pile of random sea trash. Our guy has to agree, realizing that their resource problem is a huge obstacle to his dream. Aspie says that to really expand, they need to look for trash not only in the ocean. But Murmursig reminds them that no land is visible, but Nokul seems indifferent. He is dozing. But suddenly she remembers that on the plane she grabbed some trinket, a small souvenir for the road. It turned out she noticed something in the distance that quite resembled an island. There stands a huge lonely spire, no soul around, and on its top simply lies a real treasure trove of old junk. Noko's eyes almost popped out of his head, as if the whole island of pristine premium trash. Without hesitation, he instantly jumps up and rushes forward, loudly announcing that their next stop is finally decided. He instantly activates his ability to remodel, ready to thoroughly upgrade their raft on the terrace. This umbrella and other details are instantly dismantled by a dazzling flash of light and transformed into a completely new sail and mast. Now they have a motor. Kid conveniently unbuttoning his shirt, Nokul points to the horizon and exclaims that their search for unknown trash has already begun. Thus, their little raft instantly became a real sailboat, cutting through the waves with a clear purpose. While they sail, Nokul decides that now is the best time to practice a little. He looks quite pleased with himself, noticing that his power feels strong. For training, he got that mysterious, luxuriously decorated scepter that no one could recognize before. And now he has figured it all out. He can now remodel magical items, as long as he has a few more necessary materials. Our guy understands, if he trains more, the possibilities of his ability will become simply insane. At that moment, Aspie shouted from the mist that they had finally reached their destination. Nokul is simply stunned by the scale of this place, and Murmur Sig just yawns. He confirms that this place is full of all that quality junk, and she simply says, yes, this is it. Nokul is just vibrating with excitement, ready to grab that sweet trash, but Aspie rightly notes, the island is a sheer cliff, and there is simply nowhere to land. She is also almost certain that any junk up there is most likely just useless. Hearing this, Murmur Sig became worried that she had led them on a completely pointless detour. And our guy just smiles as if shouting, I fully and completely believe in trash. He confidently tells her not to worry, resolutely looking up at that huge spire. Holding the ring up, he explains that you don't know the true value of a thing until you try to recycle it. Without hesitation, he instantly turns around and starts preparing to climb. Suddenly, he opened a box and pulled out a huge roll resembling a canvas. He figured, to climb that steep cliff, he would have to make good climbing gear. At that moment, Murmorsig lightly touches his shoulder with the tip of her wing. And then she suggests a ridiculously simple solution. Why doesn't she just fly up and get it for him? Our guy freezes for a moment, then happily hands her a large piece of fabric so she can use it as a temporary bag. Quickly agreeing, she takes off into the sky, ready for another express delivery flight. While she's gone, Aspie calls Nokful to the edge of the raft to take a look. He kneels by the turtle god and curiously peers into the water below. The water shocks with its clarity. You can see all sorts of sunken objects on the ocean floor. And when I say objects, I mean right beneath them lies a whole huge sunken city. Nokkul's face just explodes with joy. It's an absolute paradise for junk lovers. He is simply stunned and tries to comprehend that beneath the waves all this time, there was a whole metropolis hiding. Our guys, piecing together clues, realized this spire was probably the top of a giant flooded tower, right? Just in time, Murmursig sharply swooped down from Spire Peak with her express delivery. With a grin from ear to ear, Nokul prepares to inspect his brand new pile of junk from a great height. The bag opened broken fragments of some ancient-looking cannon spilled out. This pile of junk completely confused Nokul. He had never seen anything like it before. Aspie floats weightlessly closer to get a better look, and suddenly recognizes something in those strange mechanical parts. And the god turtle drops a bomb of knowledge. This is a weapon of an ancient civilization, a magical cannon. This discovery stunned Nokul, and he immediately asked Aspie to tell him more. But Aspie, the source of all ancient knowledge, suddenly falls silent and looks away, not suspicious at all. He explains that it is a destructive weapon. It uses a special formula to release powerful magical explosions. Holding the fragments in his hands, Nokul's first thought is not, oh no, a weapon, but I wonder if I can fix this. This god turtle hints that he probably can fix it because he has seen all kinds of weapons at home. This makes the gears in our guy's head start turning. He is straining to recall a certain memory. It clicked in his memory. He had seen exactly this at the oldest dump in his kingdom. A sudden revelation, and he understood. With a staff as the core, he can definitely build this. You seriously think that mysterious magical scepter they found earlier is perfectly suited for this task? Without wasting time, he activates his ability to rework the ancient parts, instantly gleam and fly together. These broken pieces clatter into place, as if by magic, reassembling into one solid, strong form. And so the ancient magical cannon is fully restored, and the whole team freezes, not making a sound. Nokul is simply going crazy with joy over his new toy after all. Every floating raft needs an ancient superweapon. Nokul, wildly excited about his new toy, decides it's time to do some shooting. He slaps his hand on the charging port, ready to power this thing with his own magic. This guy starts pouring every drop of his power into it, groaning from the incredible strain. He strains so hard his face turns red, and Murmursig just watches, completely unimpressed. He gives it his all, and she just falls asleep, and imagine, that's real moral support. And so Nokul is completely exhausted and collapses on the deck after a record-short attempt. Fully drained, he still gets up and says that at least he managed to load it. With gloomy determination, he grabs the detonator cord, ready for the decisive moment. He shouts fire with all the drama and flair of a seasoned general. But the cannon only gave a pathetic little pop, and spat out a puff of smoke. Our guy just stands there with a dead smile, pondering this complete failure of the test launch. Now. Now he sulks offended, convinced that magic is just not for him, and Sig pathetically pats him like. Aspie just sighs as if to say, all right, I'll do it myself, and a halo of water gathers above him. Suddenly, a dazzling flash of light exploded from the tiny shell, shocking Knuckle. When the light fades, Aspie is now fully human and loudly announces that he is taking full control. Her hand touched the cannon, and it instantly lit up with a powerful divine glow. That magical vial on the side instantly fills to the brim and emits a blinding light. Now she has control, she grabs the trigger and asks if that's all there is here. With a barely noticeable smirk, she says her shot will be a little better than the prince's pathetic attempt. And she releases a colossal energy beam that cuts through the ocean. Aha, just a little star is better. Aspie's shot releases a blinding beam, and the recoil itself throws Knuckle back. Her explosion cut a huge hole right through the spire, shattering the entire upper half to pieces. Our guy screams at the top of his lungs, his ears are ringing, and Sig just looks slightly stunned. Peering into the new hole, they saw a hidden room, and Aspie casually admitted that she had overdone it a bit. This guy is still going crazy, shouting at the top of his lungs, "What did you do?" But this small miscalculation shook the entire spire. It is now rapidly collapsing. A huge boulder breaks off from the cliff and rushes straight toward their floating terrace grate. Knuckle shouts for everyone to run, falling stones are about to crush us. This guy rushes across the deck, desperately trying to avoid the approaching apocalypse. Looking back, you see, yes, they are about to be crushed. Raising his eyes, he sees a giant boulder that is about to crush him completely any moment now. But at the last moment, Sig lunged forward and delivered a flying kick with both legs. Fertilands connect, and a boulder the size of a house simply explodes into a cloud of dust and gravel. On the deck below, Knuckle is soaked to the bone from that splash, intact but stunned. After that, they all stand on the raft and realize how incredibly close it was. Our guy just falls, admitting that he really thought any moment now he would remain at the bottom of the ocean forever. Even Sig seems to feel the consequences. She grabbed her leg. It hurts a little. Wonderful. Filled with gratitude, Knuckle offers her any reward she desires, and she is clearly interested. Her face softens, a slight blush flashes on her cheeks, and she looks at him with serious expectation. And her big reward for saving him from certain death, just a light stroke on the head. Knuckle is completely confused when Sig simply turns away from him. So he hesitantly reaches out and asks if the pillow under the head is exactly what she needs. She simply melts, confirming that this is exactly the 5-star treatment she wanted. Her guy apologizes for being so dumb, and Aspie just watches how this awkward scene unfolds. The turtle goddess sighs. Without worshippers, her magic has barely held on for centuries. So when she started charging the cannon, she completely misjudged her power level. It turned out their faith in her gave her a huge power boost she hadn't even considered. Knuckle is in complete shock. It turned out that faith with a star charged the cannon, not just raw magic. Suddenly he broke into a smile and told Aspie there was absolutely no need to apologize. He is simply thrilled finally they have a real weapon to defend themselves. But Aspie interrupts and delivers bad news, looking down at the cracked deck. As for that weapon, with one shot it completely shattered it again, and Knuckle panicked. Wasting no time, he instantly uses the skill recycle to prevent the cannon from falling apart. He barely keeps himself together, but Aspie points out that the outer hull is still broken. Knuckle realizes he needs much better materials, otherwise this thing will just keep breaking in his hands. It was then that Murmur took 6 steps forward and out of nowhere stretched out her wing. At that very moment, a huge dark shadow can be seen approaching through the clouds. Aspie panics and admits that the thick fog completely blocked his path until this moment. Cold sweat runs down Knuckle's face as he looks up at the ominous silhouette. Aspie, now in human form, grimly says that if this is Elkin's fleet, we are doomed. Sig's eyes narrow as she confirms that she finally sees the approaching vessel, and out of the fog emerges a huge tattered galleon, a true ghost ship. Its hull is completely cracked and battered, as if it just escaped a brutal fight. And on the torn sails flutters a strangely cute pirate flag with a cat drawing. This is definitely a pirate ship, and it looks like it has seen better centuries. Knuckle and Sig are in complete panic. She senses a dangerous aura from the ship. The boy just looks with distrust and by that confirms, yes, pirates are now officially on the menu. Aspie instantly panics and shouts at them to get out of there quickly before they are noticed. But Knuckle just looks at the ship with a thoughtful expression on his face instead of fear. He notices it looks more like a shipwreck than a real threat. The crew is nowhere to be seen. Standing on the deck of the massive ship and looking down, he notices the damage seems to be from cannonballs. He quickly puts two and two together and realizes the crew probably left a long time ago. And above our guy's head, a tiny light bulb that loves trash lights up. He joyfully exclaims that the abandoned ship is like a floating chest of trash. Maspai can't believe it, asks if he really intends to board, and he just smiles, rope in hand. While he ties their raft, Aspie mutters that this is exactly why they call him the Trash Prince. He simply takes it as a compliment, telling her, "Don't praise me like that, zero awareness, pure confidence." He has simple logic. After all, pirates collect treasures from all over the world. So that ghost ship might just have the quality materials he needs to finally fix their cannon once and for all. Without delay, he asks Mermersig to lift him through the air onto the deck, and she gladly agrees. Mermersig simply melts from the head pats. This is the height of luxury for her. But the tender moment is broken when she suddenly throws him onto the deck, screaming in pain. It turns out her leg still hurts terribly from the blow that earlier smashed a boulder. She calls Notchel strangely fragile for a human, and he just sits there, completely puzzled. Shaking himself off, our guy gets to his feet, all fired up, finally ready to explore the ghost ship. Just as they were approaching the cabin door, a shadowy figure flashed past the window. Mermersig immediately shouts out, warning that she definitely saw a person inside. Noko responds with a crazy smile. Nothing will stop his trash hunt. His brilliant plan is simply to approach and politely ask the potential pirates for their trash. Without hesitating for a moment, he flung the door open and confidently burst inside as if he owned the place. At the sight, his eyes popped out of their sockets, for the entire cabin is filled from wall to wall with silent warriors in armor. Our guy, completely clueless, cheerfully greets them on surviving the shipwreck. And then the visor lifted, revealing a whole army of undead with burning red eyes. The whole crew simultaneously lost their minds and screamed in utter horror at the moment of revelation. Without hesitation, one of the Bone Knights instantly lunged at Nokul with a sword. The blow pushes him back across the deck, and he barely dodges the deadly swing. From the floor, Aspie shouts loudly, as if very eager to help. They are actually skeletons. Thanks for the update. Mermersig rushes forward to protect them, realizing that these corpses are controlled by a necromancer. With a silent roar, another bone warrior lunges to finish off. Mermersig instantly intercepted the attack and delivered a hard blow straight to the skeleton's belly. This corpse in armor flies back under the furious force of her protective rage. Next, she stomps her huge claw right through his arm, pinning it to the deck. The swing of his sword goes aside, she presses it down, and completely neutralizes the threat. Nokul just looks from the floor, completely stunned by the sudden fury of his bodyguard. This skeletal figure only clicks its teeth as its claws approach to deliver the finishing blow. And with one destructive squeeze, she turns his spine to dust. She fiercely looks at the others as if challenging them, just try to harm her precious prince. And then she simply launches into an unstoppable attack, tearing and trampling the entire undead squad with her feet and hands. Meanwhile, Nokul and Aspie pressed against the wall and froze in horror at this bloody massacre. When the last one fell, Mermersig looked around, satisfied that she had destroyed everything herself. Our guy sighed with relief, thanking her for saving them from the bone apocalypse. But suddenly, one of the skeletons, broken on the floor, begins to magically reassemble. Everyone watches in fear as a whole army of undead begins to rise from the pile of debris. Before Mermersig could react, one of the revived skeletons suddenly grabbed her from behind. It squeezes her wing with a deadly grip, and its empty eye sockets stare straight at her. The rest of the horde attacks her, pressing so hard that she cannot even move. Nokul shouts her name, desperately watching as his only line of defense completely collapses. He desperately rushes to her, trying to pull one of the skeletons off her back. But he is completely powerless, shouting that he cannot even budge its iron grip. While the metal boot presses on Aspie, he explains through tears that these were once proud warriors. They were created to turn the fallen on the battlefield into an immortal army, a true necromancer's dream. Mermersig feels disgust and horror at the very thought of desecrating the bodies of fallen soldiers for battle. While she is being pressed down, one of the skeletons again turns its attention to Nokul, ready to finish him off. It lowers its sword for a fatal blow, but the blade crumbles upon hitting the floor. The skeleton just stands shocked. Its weapon suddenly turns to dust, and it does not understand why. Meanwhile, Aspie is completely confused and loudly shouts that it is all over for them. But Nokul firmly plants his foot on the deck and refuses to go down without a fight. He takes a stance against the bony soldier, ready to fight despite the terribly slim chances. No, forget it, he and Aspie scream from pure, sincere terror. The eye of this skeleton glows ominously and fixes on our guy. He is its next victim. Suddenly it stops and freezes, looking at its hand, which seems to be falling apart before its eyes. It turns out Nokul grabbed the sword hilt and is already using his crafting skill to simply dismantle it. In a flash of light, the weapon instantly crumbles, leaving the skeleton unarmed. Wasting no time, Nokul responds with a fierce swing of his own blade. His strike hits the skeleton's head, cleanly flies off its shoulders. Looking down at the twitching body, he realizes, to stop them, you have to separate the head. What an incredible discovery, but the rest of the bony crew still attacks Murmursig. And at that moment, another skull with a loud, dull thud fell onto the deck. When the skeletons were disassembled, Nokul rushed to Murmursiga, and he sincerely thanked him for the rescue. Aspie says that his recycling skill is the perfect counter because it simply breaks down their weapons. One little hint from Aspie, and that's enough for him to set his new plan in motion from the trash. He decided that if these skeletons are just junk, empty bones in pathetic armor, then he can use this whole pile for spare parts. Finally, everything about the Phantom ship became clear. The crew didn't go anywhere, they just became bonier. Meanwhile, Aspie, like a puddle of relieved turtle Tircis, completely stunned that he almost died. She calls him by name, and our guide just looks at the floor, not understanding at all what's happening now. Aspie points to the door nearby and whispers that she senses a barely perceptible human presence inside. Noko instantly triggers the hero complex, thinks the skeletons are besieging some poor soul inside. And he just starts banging on the door like a worried courier, asking if anyone is home. Getting no answer, he grabs the handle. It's locked tight, a bad sign. He instantly realized that it's not just close, they barricaded him from the other side to protect themselves. You haven't even managed to come up with a plan when Murmursig steps forward and tells him to step aside and let her handle it. She swings and spreads her wings. It's clear she's about to burst in very blatantly, and an F. And in an instant, she sharply turns and powerfully kicks the door. Her kick simply smashed the door to pieces. Wooden fragments and debris flew in all directions. She casually asks if that was enough, and Nokul just looks, recalling her terrifying combat skills. Of course, he tells her she was incredibly helpful and rewards her with another 5-star head pat. Breaking through the debris, they find themselves in what looks like the captain's cabin, but his reconnaissance is suddenly interrupted by a dark figure with claws looming over him. And the terrifying monster turned out to be a pirate captain who was completely unconscious and lying on the floor. Noko leans closer and suddenly realizes that terrifying pirate captain is actually just a girl. He is simply shocked. How can someone so young be a pirate, and in such an outfit at that? Murmursig calmly tells him that she is just unconscious, and our guy breathes a deep sigh of relief. But suddenly he is overwhelmed by a terrible memory, and he panics thinking about those who might have survived on this cursed ship. Pushing fear aside, Murmursig begins to examine the captain for wounds, and Nokul quietly thanks her. She carefully lifts the girl's leg to better inspect possible injuries. And indeed, there is a cut on her leg, probably from an attack by a skeleton squad. Nokul instantly becomes a hero and vows to immediately find medicine for her. So he started rummaging through the neighboring dresser. Even a hero sometimes has to take some loot. Ask me, I am the same voice of reason that questions whether it is really a good idea to help a random pirate. Nokul explains that he saw their flag even before they boarded, so probably they are not enemies. He points to a cute cat logo and explains, this is a privateer ship from the Arching Kingdom. In other words, she is a government pirate, effectively a state-sponsored threat. It seems that once the Kingdom of Arching suffered from a crazy pirate invasion, they decided to hire pirates to hunt other asterisk pirates, a classic strategy, fire against fire. Aspie just broke down and cried, calling him an idiot for risking everything for some elite speck of dust. At that very moment, the pirate captain's eye suddenly opens wide. It seems the official nap time is over. Murmursig was not confused at all and simply said to her a casual good morning. This greeting throws the captain into complete panic. He screams and jumps into the air. She lands on all fours, demanding to know who they are, and reveals that she is a pirate kitty. She lands in a low defensive squat, ready to pounce on these strangers with a fierce look. Measures those who just broke down her door. The cat girl instantly jumped back, trying to move away from the giant winged woman. But Murmursig manages to catch her in the air, asking if everything is okay, while the captain is all covered in feathers. Nokul rushed out with a first aid kit, trying to ease the tension and assure that they are not enemies. He opens the first aid kit and nervously explains, the skeletons disappeared, now her leg needs immediate treatment. Still not recovered, the captain clung to Murmursig as if his life depended on it, while Murmursig looks completely indifferent. Our guy begins to bandage her leg and apologizes for his unprofessional medical skills. After she is patched up and dressed, she finally calms down enough to speak and thanks him. The captain sincerely apologizes for being scared and upset, and humanly thanks them for the rescue. Turns out her name is Gynias, and she is the captain of this ship, the Golden Lynx. Murmursig states his name and responds, as always, with an impassive, restrained expression. Genius is still wildly confused, but Murmursig then simply casually brushes off her apologies. Then Aspie jumps out and introduces himself because you can't forget that talking turtle. And this immediately throws the captain into another hysterics turtle spoke. Finally, our guy introduces himself with a confident smile, Nokul arcing. The surname arcing and her eyes sharply widen with sudden horror that gradually dawns on her. Nokul, completely without musical ear, asks if she has any trash he could take, and this leaves her bewildered. Suddenly, everything falls into place. Ish recognizes him, Nokul Arson, the infamous criminal with the deadly curse skill. And our guy just stands there, sweating and completely not understanding why only his name caused a panic attack. Jinya draws a blade and swears to catch Noko before his curse can harm anyone else. Our guy is only trying to calm her down, while she literally flies up from pure, uncontrollable panic. Aspie shouts that his terrible reputation has clearly spread much further than they thought. Ignoring them, Genius tells him to Properito be ready to neutralize this notorious criminal. She stomps her foot and rushes forward, confident that this will be a heroic attack, but Nokul simply extends the broken sword hilt, completely bewildered by all this. This sight makes her freeze in place. Suddenly looks incredibly green around the cheeks. She instantly covers her mouth with her hand, looks down at Aspie and completely forgets about the attack. And then she just vomits over the side of the Sheepa, truly magnificent sight. And in a moment the mop was already seriously working, cleaning the deck. Nokul grumbles about that terrible mess, while Murmursig just watches, completely unmoved. Jinya sits nearby, completely stunned and mortally embarrassed that the enemy has humiliated her a second time. Turns out the formidable pirate captain suffers terribly from seasickness, nausea knocks him off his feet, and that's exactly what is needed. He tells her again that they are not enemies, adding that she really cannot do anything about her condition. Then she says that she dreams of becoming a great corsair like her father, but her career was cut short by an accident. During a training naval battle, the ship exploded. Nokul repeats her words, and his gaze seems to scream. He definitely knows what kind of accident it was. Just the thought of it immediately shows on Jeannie that she is about to feel sick again. He sharply tells her to shut up if her chatter causes another deck washing. She simply turns away, completely confused and embarrassed by all this. Genius explains that if she cannot command it, this ship is doomed to become junk, and as soon as the word junk is uttered, Nokul instantly gives it his full attention. She remembers how at the Naval Academy she was taught, a ship without a captain is just junk. This is just a floating pile of junk, just waiting to sink in the sea. When her crew left and the dream shattered, she feels like a complete failure. This ship belonged to her father, and she dreamed all her life of following in his footsteps. After his disappearance, she took it upon herself with firm determination to take his place and studied for years. But her paralyzing seasickness is so strong that she can't even properly command the vessel. Nokul listens to her entire tragic story, and a brilliant idea clearly forms in his mind. He agrees if she gives up, the ship will truly turn into useless junk, which, judging by her facial expression, this is clearly not the motivational speech she was looking for. Murmursig jumped into the conversation. Even with his skills, they are not the sailors who could help. Nokul, to prove his point, with one jerk broke off a piece of wood from the table nearby. He lifts the split board, and right before her eyes, his recycling skill started working. In a dazzling flash of light, the broken boards begin to reassemble and transform again. He proudly presents her with a perfectly made miniature table, as if just crafted. Jinya simply froze, as if there was a short circuit in her head from the magic she just saw. He tells her that although traveling with a criminal is risky, she can use his power to reach the shore. But she still doubts, showing that the entire ship is complete ruins. So our guy asks for a full tour. He wants to see with his own eyes what kind of trash he will have to work with. The genius reluctantly agreed to his trash tour, still not quite sure what to think about this guy. So Nokul simply picks her up on his back, because walking is clearly for weaklings. He carries her outside, she thanks him, but immediately notices how much the ship was rocking. And that was enough, her seasickness immediately returned, which greatly puzzled Nokul. Here is another majestic bout of vomiting, and our heroes watch it completely indifferently. They decide to move briefly to their much smaller and externally much less stable raft. After cleaning up, Nokul quickly rinses himself because every hero needs an extra shirtless scene. Genius again apologizes incessantly, and Nokul looks as if he has already resigned himself to his fate as a cleaner. Aspie suggests everyone relax a bit on the raft for a pirate who is seasick. This sounds like a terrible idea. Genius nervously stands next to Murmursig, probably wondering what fresh hello awaits her. But suddenly she realizes the incredible. For the first time in her life, she is on the water and she does not feel sick. It turns out Aspie uses her skill, Blessing of the Earth, to magically strengthen the raft with roots. Genius froze in surprise, and Aspie explains that she used to constantly save sailors after shipwrecks with this power. In a flashback, we see how she gently calms the waves with her power so that ships can pass safely. This power apparently made trade routes much safer, and she remembers that time warmly, but new magical devices from other countries made her powers redundant, a classic story about automation taking jobs. Jinna listens attentively, her heart drawn to the little talking turtle with a tragic past. Aspie finished the story, explaining that her island eventually sank and left her completely alone for many years. But in her eyes flickers a spark of determination. She is not just a victim. Nokul absorbed every word, a seriousness appearing on his face as he learned about his friend's lonely story. Hearing Aspie's tragic story, Nokul dressed with a new, steely determination. Aspie tells him, although you are a good person who loves junk, it's better not to spoil the ship of Ginny. Genius stands silently, still trying to comprehend this strange crew. She finally agrees, staying on their raft may be the only way to get rid of seasickness. The ship is broken anyway, so she decides, better to use it for good than let it sink. With a desperate look, she solemnly entrusts Nokul with the care of her father's favorite ship. Our guy just smiles, fully delighted to accept the challenge of remodeling the entire galleon. He announced his grand plan, to use the ship's materials to significantly expand their raft. The first step in the plan is a real raid on the junkyard to sort the useful from the junk. And then Aspie, as if casually, transforms into a human girl, and Ginny just freezes in complete shock. As soon as the crew gathered, Nokul took charge of the world's most chaotic operation to rescue the wreckage. He threw his hand forward and, with genuine dramatic pathos, activated his recycling skill. All the saved boards and materials instantly stack into neat, orderly piles. A moment in their tiny raft has already docked at a huge, newly built wooden platform. The whole team sits down for a well-deserved lunch break on their new platform. Finally, they look like one whole. He even crafted separate beds for all of them. It's more of a floating studio than a raft. The remnants of golden links now just drift like debris completely disassembled into parts. But Nokul is not finished yet. For the last time he activated his power, a shining magical circle glowed around him. With a triumphant shout and a little spirit on his shoulder, he declares, "Project completed." And he shows them their new home, a huge multi-story floating village made from an old ship. Nokul announced that they are finally approaching another sea city and was very proud of his floating village. He even crafted a separate trash box priorities people. And in addition, on this so-called magnificent raft, he arranged a real toilet and wash basin. Our guy proudly shows off the new little house, a real shelter from bad weather. He admits that he couldn't craft a magic cannon from these materials, but oh well, maybe next time. After that, he lightly knocked on one of the new doors. Come into Murmursig, she is already settling into the new bed, as if at home. She confirms it is incredibly comfortable, and she finally looks completely calm. They have a little moment, she thanks him, and Nokul is simply happy that she approves. But suddenly Jinya appears, and Nokul's good mood instantly melts away. He desperately apologizes for turning her father's ship into an extension of the raft, but Jenny, with tears in his eyes, tells him that it is not at all what he thinks. In fact, she is completely and utterly touched by what he did. She explains that all her life she has heard only one thing: his skill of repurposing was called a useless curse. Taking a step forward, she prepares to tell the truth and set everything straight. The former captain extends his hand and declares that, in fact, it is simply incredible skill to touch the wall he built from the remains of her ship. With a blush on her cheeks, she sincerely thanks him for preserving the memories of her father. Nokul simply confidently raises his thumb, fully basking in the praise. When everyone finally got on the same wavelength, he asks if she knows the way to the Marine Academy. The genius asks him to wait a second and pulls out a strange-looking navigation device. She grabs the sextant to orient herself, and Nokul just watches, completely not understanding what it is. After a moment of tense calculations, she announces that she knows their exact location. Dramatically pointing with her finger, she confidently says where they should head. Nokal simply follows her finger and sees nothing but complete nothingness, an empty ocean. He and Aspie see nothing, but Genius assures them that everything is fine. And she proudly boasts that she is supposedly the genius of the sea funny, to hear that from the queen of seasickness herself. A little later, Genius ties up her hair, and suddenly she has cat ears and a tail, an unexpected twist. As soon as she heard the call from outside, she instantly responded, ready for the next step of their journey. Nokal excitedly calls her to the deck to show something. He points to a distant island and asks if that is the Marine Academy she mentioned. She quickly pulls out a spyglass, and her eyes widen. This is the very place. Through her lens, the island of Marin appears before us, their goal finally on the horizon. Then Genius drops a bombshell. This island is her hometown. The name Marine Island rings a bell in Nokal's memory, and he strains to recall where he heard it. She just waved it off and said it was no big deal if he didn't recognize the name. They say it was once an important port for both the Navy and pirates, but now just a small village. Nokal is simply stunned. Navy and pirates at the same base. What a strange story. He asked to borrow her spyglass to take a closer look, and she gladly handed it over. He sees the port teeming with warships, and Aspie immediately panics, fearing they will be discovered. Genius, now with full cat ears, points to the old, abandoned port where they can land unnoticed. The plan is ready. Their magnificent floating village quietly sails to the island to sneak up unnoticed. Reaching the rickety pier, the crew finally steps onto solid ground after a long journey. Nokal sighed deeply with relief, just glad they made it to shore intact. Her face shone with happiness as she thanked him for returning her to her native tone. She is so grateful that she even takes off her hat and makes a sincere, solemn bow. Our guy just acts cool, winks, and says he was happy to help, with the trash. But Murmersig's face suddenly turned icy. Her senses caught something nearby. Pointing with her wing at several crates, she lets Nokal know someone is hiding there. Genius calls the sneak. A shadowy figure peeks out from behind the crates. The one hiding is a nervous young girl who clearly did not expect to be found. Nokal's brain immediately imagined the worst-case scenario. The fleet had already captured them. From the shadow, one shoe emerges, and the tension builds for a whole second. And here is a big surprise: a child who fears them more than anything else. He and Murmersigar are simply confused. This is definitely not some high-ranking naval officer. On closer inspection of her bandana, a skull with crossed bones appears not at all what is worn in the Navy. Genius immediately recognizes her and loudly exclaims, "Natham." Her face suddenly lit up, and she suddenly rushed towards her at full speed. She throws herself into Genius's arms, crying and rejoicing in a happy reunion. Just watching how everything unfolds, and brilliantly guessing that they are probably acquainted. Natam confesses that all this time she was waiting for Genius to finally come home. Genius gently strokes her head and apologizes for being gone so long, and Nat M just wants more lessons on the ship. Then she introduces the team and says to Natam, "These are the people who made my return possible." The child solemnly introduces himself. "I am Natam from the pirate village, Wait Pirate Village." Our guy Nokal, with a charming smile, says his full, amusingly formal name. Natam instantly blurts out, is he really a friend of Genius, since he is a wanted great sinner? While Nokal experiences a small breakdown, Natam simply showers compliments and insists on how much she has always admired Genius. Jinnah immediately pressed her hand to her mouth to avoid revealing her chronic seasickness. To change the subject, she warmly invites the whole team to her village as a thank you. Our guy waved it off and said the offer was good, but if the fleet caught us, it would be a real disaster. She reassures him the academy is somewhat isolated, and she is quite confident she can vouch for them before the villagers. Then sparks lit up in Aspie's eyes when she learned that near the village lies a ton of old ship junk. This verbal junk excites Nokal. He grabs the Genius and insists that his skills will be extremely useful. He is in true ecstasy, exclaiming that this is the best greeting, and Jinya looks completely stunned. With a victorious hooray, Nokal rushed forward into the forest, and the others ran after him. So this whole strange company sets off along the forest path towards the village. Nokal turns to Aspie and asks if she feels uneasy following them. Suddenly he is tied up and surrounded by pirates with drawn blades. They ask if he is bait for their healers. Murmersig looks at this mess and calmly says he doesn't consider a Genius someone who would set a trap. Our guy glanced back along the path. For the first time, real concern appeared on his face. Jinnah demands to know how she can be so sure, and Murmersig calmly says her intuition told her. Then she simply invades Jinna's personal space, explaining that it's all about the human scent. This is followed by a thorough sniffing of Genius's, Neka, perfectly normal and not at all creepy greeting. Murmursig explains that a genius doesn't smell hostility, so everything is calm, guys. Nokul is completely confused and asks what the hell a smell of hostility is supposed to mean. An instant lesson harpies can actually smell human magic and sense hostile intentions. Her guy understands that's exactly how she sensed Nadam. She picked up the hostility of pirates hiding nearby. Nadam suddenly grabbed his hand to prevent him from making hasty conclusions. The girl insists, although some pirates are really evil, the people in her village are completely different. With an incredibly sincere, almost pleading face, she begs him to believe her, promising that they are not bad guys. It seems her village lives by the code of the father genius, a pirate like Robin Hood, who helped the poor. She even points to his statue and says that he taught them, being a pirate is not just about stealing. Nokvil completely melted, blushing like a child who just met the daughter of his idol. He turns to Gina and simply cannot get enough. Her dad is a true legend. But then he notices that Genius has completely fallen face down on the ground, and Murmursig has disappeared. The genius on the ground explains. Murmursig immediately took off into flight as soon as he smelled a strange scent. Our guy is completely confused. He repeats strange scent in a loop, as if it explains something. It was then that Murmursig dove from the sky in a dive, shouting the name Nokul. She lands in panic and shouts to him that something is very seriously wrong. He turns around, completely confused, and she lightly taps him on the shoulder to get his attention. She points to the village, which is now burning like a raging hell, a very bad sign. Genius and Nadam are horrified. They understand that their entire home is on fire. This girl is trembling, completely unable to comprehend the disaster unfolding before her. Nokul immediately takes the initiative and orders everyone to move out immediately. And so the whole team just rushes through the forest towards the smoke and flames. They rush along the path, and the fire burns brighter with every step. On Genius's face is pure horror. She urges herself on and runs even faster. But just at the moment when they were almost out from among the trees, she sharply stretched out her hand to stop Nokul. She points to the entrance to the village there. Figures stand in a row on guard. It is a fleet and they just stand, watching everything burn, not moving a finger. Murmursig suddenly realized that they are not here to help, they are simply blocking the territory. She feels their hostility like a smell, and suspects that they were the ones who set the fire. Genius completely loses his head, shouting that the fleet violated their neutrality agreement. Meanwhile, Nadam quietly whispers for her parents, terribly frightened for them. Nokul gently places his hand on her shoulder, trying not to let her fall apart. He tries to calm her, assuring that everything will be fine. At the front gates in Ogo, our boy is racking his brains over a new attack plan. Suddenly, a lightning idea comes to his mind. He suggests, let's just fly in from the sky. The genius's eyes will light up if Murmursig carries them, and then they can completely bypass the fleet. He asks if she can bear the weight, and she casually agrees as if ready for human air transport. A look of pure, undiluted concentration appears on Murmursig's face. It's time to act. And she is in the air, carrying the whole team like a very clumsy human kite, screaming. Genius is already complaining that her head is about to be torn off. That's the whole secret airborne landing. They land in the very heart of utter chaos, where the sea archers are simply shooting arrows into the crowd. One soldier calmly sets a burning arrow on the bowstring, completely unmoved by the fleeing civilians saving their lives. The little boy falls to his knees and cries, surrounded by the terrible consequences of the attack. A pristine white boot bursts into the frame, showing no respect for the fallen. From behind, a naval officer calmly remarks on what a beautiful flame it is, while his subordinate salutes. Meet Colonel Washer, a man with a nose that could serve as a weapon, who declares that all pirates are trash. With a truly sinister smile, he orders his men to just keep setting everything around on fire. And then this madman suddenly holds a quiz, asking the frightened villagers who the most respected captain is here. His soldiers immediately shout his name, either out of scared loyalty or simply out of terror. Then Washer asks who is the strongest at sea, clearly enjoying the sound of his own name. His men shout his name again, and he gives them a smug smile, one that just makes you want to punch him. But his face darkens. He looks at the crying boy and simply says, "Wrong." The boy raises his gaze and defiantly tells the colonel that he is not the strongest at all. Tears ran down his face, and he shouted that the real strongest is a man named Francis. For a moment, we see the legendary pirate Francis, a hero who seemed to protect this village. Then the boy drives the colonel away, even calling him Big Nose, a truly deadly mistake. Wash's guys just froze in complete horror because they realized their boss's pride had just taken a direct hit. He washed his face, and a confident, creepy smile appeared on it clearly. He is enjoying this little power game. He nods to his subordinate and archer, who looks like he just swallowed a bug. They gave the order, burn the child along with the rest of this trash, of course. The poor boy completely petrified with fear, preparing for the worst. This archer only stammers, completely stunned by the order to harm a child. He is actually trying to object, saying that their target is, well, literally a child. Washa instantly grabs him by the collar, clearly intolerant of disobedience. With an icy gaze, he asks why someone hesitates to get rid of the trash. The face of this soldier simply screams, "I made a terrible career choice." Vasher then trampled the pirate flag and shouted with passion that heroes like Francis disgust him. He grabs the poor guy and shakes him, shouting that all pirates are dangerous, without any exceptions. The soldier tries to beg for mercy for the child, but the words choke in his throat. And then a threat flies by. Vasha asks if the soldier and his family are also trash. Subtlety is clearly not his strong suit. And instantly, the soldier's spine completely dissolved in a puddle of fear. He draws the fiery arrow, begging for mercy for his family and carrying out this terrible order. His hand shakes so much that it's a miracle he can hold the bow steady at all. Having no other choice, he releases the burning arrow straight at the boy. Vasher's smile is simply demonic. He gets exactly what he wanted. The boy only looks in horror as the arrow whistles straight at him. In the reflection of his eye, the soldier who fired is already running away. But at the last second, a flash of light intercepts the arrow in the air, and they're knock all on his knees, protecting the boy with a shining ring in his hand.